I don't make that either the foundation or the most important thing I have to say. If people want to know where I come out on the meaning of life, I say, the world is sacred. It's wonderful. We're so grateful to be here. There's so much good to be done. I'm so grateful for all the good that has been done by others that I have been the beneficiary of. I'd like to do a lot of good back. That's meaning. That's plenty of meaning.
Doesn't that indicate there will always be something like religion on our planet?
Yes, there will be morality and community and love and faith and beauty and joy. That's like religion.
Dan Dennett, thank you very much for being on Hard Talk.
Oh, thank you. Enjoyed it.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Saroja Coelho, your new overnight host, and as always, thanks for listening.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. Well, we made it to Friday. Welcome to it. This is the morning show on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube, 3 minutes to 6 o'clock. And not rain, not yet. We didn't get it starting overnight. But for today, we are expecting it to become cloudy and an amount of 5 to 10 millimeters of rain expected in Winnipeg, and it's going to be windy. Close to as windy as yesterday, not quite though. Wow, what a dust bowl it was yesterday afternoon. So we sure could use the rain as well. So that's what we have in store. Show's on air till 8:37 a.m. Good morning, Corey Funk, directing the show and covering the commute. Good morning, Brad Lilly's behind the glass, and good morning, Abby Adiemi, who is our technical producer and will be covering weather on air as well. Heather Wells is here also with our news headlines to start our day. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Air Canada is apologizing after a flight crew took the headdress of the Assembly of First Nations National Chief away from her before takeoff. Cindy Woodhouse-Nepanak, in social media posts, says airline staff forced her to hand over a case containing the sacred item as she was boarding. The National Chief says the case was put in a garbage bag to be sent away to cargo storage. Woodhouse-Nepanak says it was handed back to her by the pilot after she complained. Air Canada says it has reached out to the National Chief to apologize. We'll hear more on this throughout the morning. And the executive director of Lions Housing Centres is bristling at a report on the sale of Lions Place, calling it slander. That report was released this week by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives on the sale of that former 55-plus building on Portage Avenue. We'll hear more in our next local news at 6:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, this morning on the program, to speak to Heather's top headline there, we are going to be talking to an elder in our community about her reaction to what went wrong. And so stay tuned. It's also been covered nationally, that story about the headdress being taken. So we're going to hear more about it. In addition, today on the program, after 7 o'clock, quite a story from a CBC News investigation into the slaughter and sale of uninspected meat. Think meat that you might see for sale on Kijiji or Marketplace, or where's that coming from? Well, the CBC did an investigation into it. We'll talk to Terry Reith all about his findings and also how they could reverberate here in Manitoba. So stay tuned. That's all still ahead and more. But right now, let's turn our attention to World Report at 6.
On Cue with Tom Power.
When St. Vincent was making her latest album, she knew that she had to have total control to see her vision through. She'll tell you about producing her own record, why she wants you to figure out what the lyrics mean on your own, and the song that scares her road manager. That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. Air Canada is apologizing for an incident involving a sacred headdress belonging to the Assembly of First Nations National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepanak. The crew actually tried to take the item away and stow it in the plane's cargo hold. Linda Ward is on the story for us this morning. Linda, take us through what happened and where Air Canada appears to have gone wrong.
Well, John, Cindy Woodhouse-Nepanak normally travels with the headdress in a case on her lap or in carry-on storage. But on a flight Wednesday, Air Canada staff took it away, put it in a plastic bag and tried to put it into cargo storage because they said there was no room in the cabin. She says the situation got tense. Words were exchanged with her staff, and other passengers then intervened. She complained. The pilot came out and brought the case back. Woodhouse-Nepenak then took to social media and said in a statement, Air Canada needs a protocol for First Peoples so that we're not harassed for our sacred items. Our headdresses, she says, don't belong in garbage bags by airlines. Now, Woodhouse-Nepenak received the headdress during a ceremony on New Year's Day for her national leadership, for her work on Indigenous child welfare. The AFN says this is one of the highest honors that you can get, and the eagle feathers are blessed to support leaders in their travels.
Yeah, and it is a remarkable looking headdress with those eagle feathers. It's quite tall. So what are you hearing in terms of reaction to this morning?
Yeah, so Air Canada quickly reacting to this, saying that they have reached out to the national chief to better understand, to apologize. They've issued a statement of their own saying Air Canada understands the importance of accommodating customers with items and symbols of sacred cultural significance. They add that they are reviewing their policies. We're also hearing from David Lametti, the former federal justice minister and lawyer specializing in Indigenous law, and he says this left him stunned.
There aren't many chiefs across Canada who would have that kind of headdress. It is critically important that it be treated as a sacred object, and our national carrier should know that by now.
Federal Transport Minister Pablo Rodriguez agrees, coming out and saying this is unacceptable, saying the government expects Air Canada to treat Indigenous customers with more respect. John.
Linda Ward joining us in studio. Thanks, Linda.
You're welcome.
A First Nation in southwestern Ontario is under a state of emergency this morning. Air quality monitors at the Anjanong have shown high levels of benzene. The First Nation says it comes from a nearby chemical plant owned by multinational company Ineos. The company has announced a temporary shutdown to address a mechanical issue. A Quebec family says it has finally located their loved one's remains after the wrong body was sent back to them from Cuba. Faraj Alajarjour died last month on a vacation in Varadero. Somehow his remains were sent to Russia. Alison Northcott has the details.
He told me, your father in Russia, it's like in a town, north Moscow.
After days of desperate calls looking for answers, Karam Jarjour says the Canadian government has confirmed his father's body ended up in Russia and that he's been buried. He says Canada is working to bring his remains home.
We need to wait like more time now. The situation is complicated now because they're gonna talk with the government, It's like protocol.
Faraj Alajarjour died of a heart attack last month while vacationing with his family in Cuba. His family paid $10,000 to the Canadian government to facilitate the transfer of Jarjour's remains back to Canada through a Cuban agency, but they were sent the wrong body. The Cuban government has since apologized. Jarjour's daughter, Miriam, says now all they can do is wait.
It's
like someone has tied my hands, she says, and I can't do anything. The family says it's spoken directly with Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly. The federal government says its consular services and global affairs continue to help and support the family. Jarjour's funeral was supposed to be this week, but it was cancelled, and the family is still waiting to find out when they'll be able to say a proper goodbye. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
The United States and China have some big geopolitical issues to resolve. They don't see eye to eye on the war in Ukraine, control of Taiwan, or the South China Sea. And today, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Beijing, trying to bring the two sides closer together. He's met with President Xi Jinping and other senior officials today. Laura Westbrook has the details.
This was the message that U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is keen to stress on his trip to China.
Face-to-face diplomacy matters. It's important for avoiding miscommunications, misperceptions, and to advance the interests of the American people.
Ahead of the sessions, U.S. officials signaled Blinken will press China to stop companies from funding Russia's war effort in Ukraine. Beijing has called that a groundless accusation. Stark differences also remain over Taiwan and in the South China Sea, where the U.S. sees China as being increasingly aggressive. But Beijing accuses the U.S. of flexing its muscles in its backyard. Blinken says they discussed areas of difference, but they also talked about shared interests, such as counter-narcotics. According to state media, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi says the relationship had stabilized, but negative factors were increasing, and he says China's right to development had been unreasonably suppressed. James Crabtree is with the European Council on Foreign Relations.
This relationship remains fundamentally competitive. There are big challenges from the management of Taiwan to the South China Sea, which are not going to be improved.
Following his meeting with Blinken, Chinese President Xi Jinping says he hopes the United States can look at China's development in a positive light. He said this is a fundamental issue that needs to be addressed for the US-China relationship to move forward. Laura Westbrook for CBC News, Hong Kong.
Meanwhile, TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, says the platform is not for sale. This after the U.S. Congress passed a law to force it to sell the app or be banned in the United States. In Canada, it's prohibited on government-owned devices, but there's no word yet on whether it will be banned here in the United States. Scenes of confrontation and protest at Indiana University in Bloomington. At least 33 people were arrested at that protest. Scenes like this are playing out across the country. The University of Southern California has canceled main stage graduation ceremonies, the school citing safety concerns for the cancellation. Hundreds have been arrested from on-campus pro-Palestinian protest camps in the last week. Burkina Faso has suspended BBC and Voice of America radio stations for their coverage of a report by Human Rights Watch. The report accuses the military of killing more than 200 civilians, including 56 children, in villages suspected of cooperating with militants. Burkina Faso's communication spokesperson says both radio stations have been suspended for 2 weeks. The country is warning other media networks not to report on the story. The second phase of voting is underway in India. About 160 million voters are expected to cast their ballots as the country's the world's biggest election rolls on. Preeta Brabasi has more from New Delhi.
Nearly every day this week, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has made the same claim in his election speeches, accusing his rivals of wanting to prioritize the welfare of Muslims over that of Hindu citizens.
My rivals will collect all your wealth and distribute it amongst those who have more children. They will distribute it amongst the infiltrators. Should your hard-earned money be given to the infiltrators?
This was a reference to India's 200 million Muslim community. And critics say Modi is peddling anti-Muslim rhetoric to bolster his position with the country's majority Hindu voters. Modi has defended himself by saying he's simply speaking the truth. India's main opposition party, the Indian National Congress, has denied they have any such plans of redistributing the wealth of the nation. The party's de facto leader, Rahul Gandhi, said this in response.
For the first time in the history of India, a political party has attacked India's constitution with an aim to destroy it.
5 days after Modi made the comments, the Election Commission of India finally wrote to Mr. Modi's party asking for an explanation on Thursday. But the opposition has accused the body tasked with holding free and fair polls in the country of leniency, furthering allegations of the government misusing federal agencies. Political experts say polarizing voters ahead of elections is a familiar tactic of Modi's ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, one that works in their favor by consolidating the majority Hindu votes. Priyata Brajbasi for CBC News, New Delhi.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. If you're looking for tools to talk about the day's big stories with the little people in your life, check out cbckidsnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. Well, rain has started in Brandon now, not yet in Winnipeg. Thanks for joining us here on Information Radio. You're on CBC. We're live downtown on 89.3 FM or on the app. You can also find us on YouTube this morning if you want to watch and say hello and comment there. This hour on the program, Canadian actor Jerry Seinfeld declared the movie business is over. That was in an interview published this week. Coming up, we're going to talk to a cultural critic about the context of that and actually the future of the business. So stay tuned. Also, this hour, two of the greatest Jets of all time have some advice for this year's team. Ulf Nilsson and Peter Sullivan, who hoisted more than one Avco Cup for the team back in the 70s, weigh in on the playoffs. And they're going to be in Winnipeg actually in a couple weeks for a reunion of the 1975 winning Jets. So stay tuned for part of that Zoom interview coming up just before 7. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells for news headlines.
Good morning. Winnipeg lost out on a $1.6 billion manufacturing facility. The Japanese multinational Asahi Kasei has announced plans to build a lithium-ion separator plant in Ontario. It will make a component for electric vehicle batteries. Asahi Kasei says it is getting financial support from Ontario and Canada. Winnipeg and Manitoba were trying to lure the plant here. They did not disclose what, if any, incentives were on offer in this province. Victims of last year's deadly bus crash near Carberry are being honored with a monument in Dauphin. The city's mayor says the monument will be unveiled June 15th, marking the one-year anniversary of that crash. We'll hear more in our next local news at 6:30.
Heather, also in news, I just made Jerry Seinfeld Canadian.
I heard that. I was wondering, did she say Canadian?
Instead of, what do you think I should have said?
Comedian, maybe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Maybe you were the comedian.
Maybe I was. I can't even mimic his voice. My sister used to be good at it. Everyone has someone in their life that can do the Jerry Seinfeld voice, I think.
Oh, yeah. And you know, just the intonation, the way he speaks.
Yeah. I saw him in Winnipeg, actually. He was pretty funny. Just a reminder, we still are giving away, speaking of things funny, tickets to the Comedy Fest. So the contest has really started to take off. We've got some entries coming in both online, on email, and also on the phone. So remember, we are not going to give those tickets away until next week. So you have until Tuesday at noon to continue to enter to win tickets. You got to tell us a mom joke. 788-3205. Abby Adeyemi, how are you doing?
Good morning.
Hi.
How you doing today?
I'm awesome because I love your shoes.
Oh, you mean this one?
Show the people. Like neon yellow? Yellow.
That was like an accident, actually.
Your shoes were what?
Yeah, because that's just what I use in the house to walk around. And this morning I went for a short walk before coming to work and I didn't change my shoes.
That's like the day I drove to work in my slippers, literally. Anyway, your shoes match your shirt. I love it. And your smile.
Thank you.
We're going to need it because today's going to be gray.
Yeah, gray day. Currently, we're experiencing cloudy conditions. We are at 15 degrees. We'll have a mixed bag of weather today. Today's forecast calls for, the clouds getting thick, and when it gets thick, what happens? Showers will follow. So we're expecting some showers this morning, and we're expecting about 5 to 10 millimeters of rain. Winds will be coming in from the south and may bring some gusts, so be prepared for that. Now, despite that, the warmth we're feeling, temperatures are actually forecasted to dip to around 9 degrees by this afternoon, and tonight won't really offer much because the rain is still going to stay with us. We're going to see periods of rain transitioning into drizzle as expected, then some shift in the winds from the south to the north, bringing some gusts along. But if we look at tomorrow, Saturday offers more like a glimmer of hope. We're going to see that drizzle tapering off in the morning and then giving way for some clear skies throughout the day. For the rain, Brandon is already seeing some rain now at 9 degrees. It's partly cloudy in Thompson at 1, and Gimley's at 14, also partly cloudy. And the Interlake region will also be seeing some rain today. In Winnipeg, we are heading to a high of, not really high, we're just dipping to 9.
Yeah, we're falling.
Yeah,
it's one of those days. All right, well, we're 15 now, dropping to 9. Thank you, Abby. Let's get to the commute. Hello, Corey Funk.
Hello. Yes, once again, looks like another straightforward kind of commute so far today. Bike ride was nice. I didn't wear gloves in for the first time today, which felt really nice. If you see anything going out there, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call. Tell me what you're seeing. 204-788-3093.
Well, you know what's coming. Just by playing a few notes, you can know whose voice is coming next. In 3, 2, 1.
These eyes
Burton Cummings. He's written countless rock and roll hits like These Eyes. He was inducted into the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame back in 2005, but the songs he wrote when he was with the Guess Who can no longer be performed live by the current band. Now, you might recall some of this story. Earlier this month, Rolling Stone reported that Burton Cummings terminated agreements with performing rights organizations for every Guess Who song that he wrote and published. So that means fans of hits like this one, These Eyes, or American Woman, might not be able to hear them played live in concert. It's a decision that comes on the heels of a lawsuit that was filed last year by Cummings and guitarist Randy Bachman. Now, the suit accuses bassist Jim Cale and Gary Peterson of deceiving fans with a band currently touring under the Guess Who name. Burton Cummings joined host Faith Fundal on Up to Speed yesterday on CBC here, where he explained why he decided to pull the rights to his songs.
Well, my lawyers are probably the better ones to ask, but in short terms, the songs are not registered with any organization that provides a blanket license to venues. So, the fact is, I've taken intellectual property I own and made the decision to stop this deception by the cover band. The cover band has used my songs and Randy's songs over the years to draw people to their fake shows. So now it's not the band on the records that is showing up to the gigs. And this is what we're going to stop. And, it doesn't matter if someone wants to use the original recording or a cover version commercially. It doesn't matter what version they're using. They have to apply for a sync license from the publisher. And now the fake band has gone and re-recorded new fake versions of the classic songs. And not once has the fake band applied for or paid for a sync license. And they've recorded their own versions of the classic songs.
Burton, current band members say that they lawfully own the Guess Who trademark and are allowed to call their band by that name. You've characterized them as a cover band or even a fake band. What leads you to call them that?
Well, here's the thing. Over the years, I've said it dozens of times. We have never signed the name over to Cale. Or it always seems that people say we signed the name over to Cale or we sold it to him, and now I'm just changing my mind because I don't like the situation. The truth is, it was many years after the band folded when the three of us had given Cale permission to use the name for a few shows. Cale discovered at that time that the band's name had never officially been trademarked. He lied on the documents and claimed to the Patent and Trademark Office that the band's name was first exploited in 1978. Had he written the truth, 1965, the actual year, his application would have been turned down.
The current group has canceled shows on the heels of the decision. We did reach out to the manager of the current Guess Who band, who says he's worried the decision will impact the livelihoods of musicians that are touring right now. What do you say to that?
What can I possibly say to that? They've been giving out false information, and this isn't a battle of who's better than whom. It's they had 45 years to produce their own legacy, to produce their own history, decades to produce their own history. And they borrowed the hit songs to draw people to the fake shows. Now, as evidenced by the canceled shows, they didn't step up and create their own hit songs. They didn't create their own classic records.
There are many folks, when they look up your song American Woman, Lenny Kravitz's performance comes up. For folks like Lenny Kravitz, can he still perform American Woman?
Of course he can. I would issue licenses to anybody. I own the publishing for the catalog, which means I control the use of the songs in the marketplace. I'm here to say, that the information given to CBC recently was 100% incorrect. I can perform the songs. Randy can perform the songs. I can also issue licenses at will to anyone I grant permission to perform the songs. Anyone. But the fake Guess Who will no longer be performing the songs. It's as simple as that. If they believe in their own band, let them stand on the merit of what they've done. I don't see their records zipping up the charts or creating a separate history.
Burton, I'm going to ask you one more question on this decision. There was that article by Rolling Stone magazine that said, quote, "In effect, he shot himself in the foot to try to shoot the Guess Who in the face," unquote. Is that a fair characterization?
Well, let me put it this way. Someone I know online, a friend of mine from social media, he put it in perspective. He wrote this online the other day. The Guess Who cover band, they're like a band of bank robbers who are upset that the bank they've been robbing for years has decided to improve their security to prevent any future robberies. It's as simple, the bank, let's put it this way, the bank is now closed.
Burton Cummings in conversation with CBC's Faith Bundell yesterday, former frontman of the Canadian rock band, Guess Who.
I'm Janet Stewart. The U.S. government is so worried about the Chinese government getting personal information about TikTok users, it's forcing the Chinese company that owns the social media app to sell it or have it banned in the United States. Canada is watching. Let us know, would you like it if TikTok was banned here? Join us Friday for Radio Noon or call now and leave a message. 204-788-3797.
6:23 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app or YouTube. 15 in Winnipeg, mostly cloudy, expected to wake up to rain, and it's coming. So we're going to see when it comes to Winnipeg. It's already started. In Brandon, we're expecting 5 to 10 millimeters in the city. Our temperature today is going to fall to about 9 degrees. Well, they signal the seasons, the changing of the seasons. They drum up excitement. They mark periods of our lives. There's nothing quite like the movies.
When the world's greatest athlete, Michael Jordan, teams up with the world's best-loved cartoon character, Bugs Bunny, you won't believe your eyes.
Groundhog time. Weatherman Phil Connors is spending the day in Puxatawney, Pennsylvania.
Phil? Ned! 239,000 miles from Earth. In the blackness of space, there is a giant rock called the Moon. And in the year 2087, its future will be in the hands of one man. This summer, the battle between Pretty Evil.
Let's get it right this time.
And Pretty Good.
Oh, yeah, look at that. Look at me.
Begin.
Well, we were thinking a little more bubbly. Hey!
Just some old school movie trailers there with a big booming voiceover. Well, now another recognizable voice is saying that the movie business is over. Jerry Seinfeld, actor, comic, and producer, said it in an interview with GQ magazine published earlier this week. It's led to a lot of spilled ink in the entertainment press, so we're going to have a conversation about it with Dalton Higgins, publicist, author, and cultural critic. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
It's interesting, eh? You play those old trailers, from Space Jam, and you remember moments of your life when you'd go to the movies, you'd wait for the movies. What was your reaction to what Jerry Seinfeld had to say about the place of the movies in 2024?
Yeah, I think Jerry Seinfeld, he was partially correct for sure. There's a definite downward spiral when we're talking about the film business industry. I mean, I think the pandemic permanently shifted how we consume art, like how we get together, how we socialize. And, and the film industry does not exist on a separate island, right? What I learned over the pandemic is that, more than ever, we're just consuming content on our mobile devices, on our iPhones, our Androids, our laptops, and there's no turning back. But more importantly, I think because we're living in a time of severe economic restraint, I think the simple economics of going to the movies, it's going to make less sense over time. When you go see a film, you're shelling out $14, $15 to see a singular film at a theater. And once you add in transportation costs or the cost of getting snacks at the concession stand, you're out of pocket, $40, $50. And then now you juxtapose that with, let's say you get a Netflix subscription for like $6 or $12, $16, and you're able to tap their catalog of thousands of films for like under $20, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the math is not mathing,
What do you think about generationally? How might this comment and this question of whether what the place is in the movies moving forward, how might it be viewed?
Yeah, I think the experience of going to the theater is more for older generations, if I'm to be perfectly honest. Baby boomers, I'm Gen X. And I know my generation, we kind of crave that feeling that we once had, seeing films in the 80s and 90s, even the early 2000s, right? But, fast forward to today, generation now, Generation Z or Y, my own kids, they don't care too much about this idea of going to the theater, when they can essentially watch everything on their mobile devices, it's a new day.
I'm Gen X as well. I find unless it's something big, that I want to see in a big screen for either the experience of the crowd around me or something that'll look amazing, I might not make the choice either. And I used to be huge going to the movies. So you're right about things shifting here. Seinfeld went on to talk about, film doesn't occupy the pinnacle in the social cultural hierarchy that it did in most of our lives, unquote. And we've been talking about that aspect of it. But I am wondering whether or not it's also because we have these other entertainment options vying for our attention, and maybe they're outdoing the quality of the movies that we're getting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that plays a big role in all of this. I mean, when we think about the big box office blockbuster films that are usually considered an event worth checking out, like in person, going to the theater to see, I find that it's mostly because of great marketing campaigns and social media campaigns, right? So when we consider, movies like Barbie, Black Panther, Oppenheimer, it's a great marketing campaign. That's what's getting you there. You know what I mean? And those are anomalies. Now, I'm based in Toronto, and we host and stage some, huge film festivals. And film festivals still very much work, but then again, sometimes they feel like they're more about celebrity spotting than the quality of the actual films themselves,
So the new Hollywood era of the late 60s and 70s is regarded as the golden era in film. Several factors contributed to that: dismantling of the studio system, social political appeal of the time. So if we're going through that again, what's the new golden era going to look like?
Well, the new golden era or any future golden era, I mean, we're going to have to be thinking about quality control, I mean, right now in 2024, I just find that there are a lot of really bad films out there. And, when you go see a film nowadays, it's almost like you feel, you can't get those 2.5 to 3 hours back. So I would question the artistic integrity behind a lot of films. And I would also argue that originality is drying up. I mean, there's just an awful lot of sequels out there. And, I just heard yesterday that Jennifer Aniston, she's going to be producing a remake of the classic film 9 to 5, with Dolly Parton, Lily Tomlin, Jane Fonda.
So I saw it at the drive-in. I'm going to age myself really well there.
Right, but do we need a sequel of a film that came in the 80s? I don't know. I think the originality piece, we need to just some more original films, not just sequels all the time,
Thank you very much for the conversation, Dalton. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks a lot, Marcy.
So you're going to watch a movie this weekend, or are you with Dalton? And I should say you're going to go to a movie, or are you with Dalton thinking, well, I don't know. Dalton Higgins, publicist, author, and cultural critic, responding to what Jerry Seinfeld had to say about the movie business being over. It is Friday morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for being with us today. If the commute's a problem, 788-3093. If you want to tell us where it's raining, because we know it's raining in parts of Manitoba, including Brandon, give us a call, 788-3093. I'm throwing out the traffic line just in case you need it. We, coming up, have business news with Crystalie Ramlicam. We're going to talk about the aviation business. There's some new news on sanctions from manufacturers Bombardier and Airbus. So that's right after your CBC Winnipeg news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's windy still. That wind hanging on from yesterday. South gusting to 53 right now. It's 15 degrees, partly cloudy. Boy, is the day going to change. Becoming cloudy with showers today. The wind eases and the temperature slides to 9 this afternoon. Air Canada is apologizing after a flight crew took the headdress of the Assembly of First Nations National Chief away from her before takeoff. Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak, in social media posts yesterday, says airline staff forced her to hand over a case containing the sacred item as she was boarding. The National Chief says the case was put in a garbage bag to be sent away to cargo storage. She says her staff was threatened by flight crew and other passengers stood up for her. Woodhouse-Nepenak says it was handed back by the pilot after she complained. David Lametti was the federal justice minister when Canada adopted the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples in 2021.
This is not something you put in a check bag. It's that simple.
Air Canada says it has reached out to the National Chief to apologize. It says it's following up on the incident internally and will be reviewing its policies when it comes to handling such items. Woodhouse-Nepenak is from Pinemutang First Nation in Manitoba and was elected AFN National Chief last December. Winnipeg has lost out on a $1.6 billion manufacturing facility. As CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, the lithium-ion plant is going to Ontario instead.
The Japanese multinational Asahi Kasei announced plans on Thursday to build a lithium-ion separator plant in Ontario. The plant will make a component for electric vehicle batteries. Asahi Kasei did not say precisely where in Ontario the plant will go. It will be built in a joint venture with Honda, the car company, which is building other new facilities in Canada's most populous province. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Ontario Premier Doug Ford announced $5 billion of incentives for the Honda and Asahi Kasei projects. Winnipeg and Manitoba were trying to lure the lithium-ion separator plant here. They did not disclose what, if any, incentives were on offer in this province. In statements to CBC News, they touted Manitoba advantages, such as clean energy and an abundance of critical minerals. According to sources, the plant would have been built on city-owned land near the West End Water Pollution Control Centre. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The head of Lions Housing Centre says no one who wrote a scathing report into the sale of its former seniors building on Portage Avenue ever reached out to him for the Lions side of that sale. The Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives released a report this week on the sale of Lions Place to a private company. It called it organizational elder abuse. It also called for an inquiry and an audit on the sale. Gilles Verrier with Lions Housing says he was blindsided by the report and welcomes an independent examination.
They can do all the audits they want. I'd love them to look at it because guess what? Bring it on, because they'll see what we do for our residents. And we go above and beyond, and that's not an exaggeration.
Verrier calls the report slander. He says the Lions not only put millions of dollars into the building, but also subsidized rents for 3 years. But Verrier says the nonprofit could no longer afford to keep the building. A new report is raising dire concerns about the Mounties' ability to investigate national security files. The RCMP's Management Advisory Board spent more than a year studying the RCMP's federal policing program and warns Canadian safety is at risk if things don't change. Hear more on this story, as well as other national and international news, on World Report at 7. A monument honoring the victims of last year's deadly bus crash near Carberry is planned for a Dauphin City Park. The city's mayor, David Bosiak, says the monument will be unveiled on June 15th, on the one-year anniversary of the crash. The collision at the intersection of Highway 5 and the Trans-Canada left 17 people dead and 8 others injured. Many of the victims were from the Dauphin area.
There was so much history that was lost that day. With those folks, and it was just such a shock to so many of us. So I think it's just a reminder that we lost a lot of good people that day, and they'll never be forgotten.
Bosiak says a group of family members approached City Council about establishing a memorial. He says they have been working with a local manufacturer on the monument's design. And in case you missed it, Winnipeg City Council has approved renaming a major thoroughfare in the south part of the city. Bishop Grandin Boulevard and Grandin Street are a step closer to being renamed to honor the survivors of indigenous residential schools and the children who never made it home. Council approved changing the name Bishop Grandin to Abenoji Mikana and Grandin Street to Tapwaywin Way. The name changes will be registered with the Winnipeg land titles. Then businesses and property owners who are impacted will be notified. Signs will be changed in the next few weeks. Winnipeg Transit's schedule and route map will reflect the new names when it releases its summer schedule, and the city will formally mark the renaming at ceremonies guided by elders in June. You can find more news updated throughout your day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
It's time for your regional forecast now, and let's find out what's happening with the wet system that's brought showers to the province. Here's Abby.
Good morning once again. Yes, a wet system coming our way, but it's still a comfortable 15 degrees outside. I know, don't stay too cozy because the clouds are actually getting thick, and we're expecting showers to roll in as the morning progresses. Now, we could see about 5 to 10 millimeters of rain after that system goes. Winds are coming from the south. Don't forget, possible picking up some gusts. And despite the warm we're feeling right now, temperatures are forecasted to deep to around 9 degrees by this afternoon. Heading west to Brandon, it is 9 degrees with rain showers already. And you will see that throughout the day with a high of 15. Moving north to Thompson. Thompson is currently at 1. And it's partly cloudy up there with the mix of sun and clouds and chance of showers this morning. The high forecast is around 10. Further north in Churchill, it is -3 and mostly cloudy. Today will be mainly cloudy with a chance of flurries later this morning and into the afternoon period. And we'll be seeing a high of +3. Down in Dauphin, it is 13 degrees and mostly cloudy also. We'll get a chance of showers early this morning, clearing up later, and we'll reach a high of 19. Good morning to folks in Gimli. It is 14 degrees with cloudy conditions and showers expected to start soon with temperatures falling to 8 in the afternoon. Steinbach is at 14 degrees and also cloudy with showers expected and temperatures dipping to 9 this afternoon. And finally in Morris, it is 12 degrees and cloudy with showers expected and the temperatures falling to 9 degrees. For Winnipeg, we're going to see lots of clouds, showers with temperatures dropping to 9 degrees and showers will continue into tonight period. Oh, I see that plant again, Marcy.
Did you guys notice that? Thank you, Abby, for the weather. Corey's in for the traffic as well. Did you guys notice Faith left all their plants in here?
Yeah,
I love that. Put them.
It does have a nice flare, fresh vibe to it.
Yeah, I love the fact that it's green. I love it.
My favorite thing is every time they're shown on camera, Faith explains to people they're not pot plants.
Yes.
Because the leaves look kind of like cannabis. And after this week, when they made the announcement that the government's looking at being able to grow some plants, they might have looked like they were props. But no, these are bamboo.
We're now growing them here in studio as a journalistic experiment. No, we're not.
No, we're not. All right. But they're going to benefit. All the plants are going to benefit from those showers Abby's talking about. Needing to grab an umbrella on the commute then, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, definitely pull out your cycling umbrellas, which is not a thing. It looks like it's going to rain today. But otherwise, it seems like it's been a pretty straightforward commute so far. It's sad that the temperature is going down because it was a nice warm ride in this morning. If you see anything going on out there, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. Would love to hear from you. That number, 204-788-3093.
Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, it's business time, and that means Crystal Ramlakan is here for our CBC Business Report via Zoom. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Marcy.
So let's start with the aviation business. You have some news about sanctions this morning.
Yes, that's right. So aircraft manufacturers Bombardier and Airbus have been granted exemptions from federal government sanctions on Russian titanium. So that means they can continue to use parts containing titanium produced by Russia. Now, Bombardier says it doesn't actually purchase Russian titanium directly, but some of its suppliers use it, so the company needed a waiver. The news to grant Airbus a waiver drew outrage from Ukraine's ambassador to Canada. She says allowing a pass to continue to use Russian titanium when there are other suppliers in the world serves to feed the Kremlin's war machine. Now, titanium is used to make aircraft engines because of its lightweight and strength. And sanctions on Russian titanium were introduced in February. Canada was the first Western nation to target Moscow's exports of the critical mineral. And Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly says maintaining Canadian jobs was the main reason for granting the waiver. Airbus has over 4,000 employees here in Canada, and Bombardier employs almost 16,000 workers in North America.
Let's go to another story this morning. A battery company has developed a new product. It's designed to keep children safer. What are the details here?
So Energizer has come out with this new battery that warns parents if their child has swallowed it. So this comes almost 2 years after a report warned children are swallowing batteries at an alarming rate. And research suggests there's a growing problem with kids swallowing these small, round, shiny batteries that power many electronic devices that we have around in our homes. Now, the new coin lithium battery has more secure packaging, a non-toxic bitter coating to discourage swallowing, and color alert technology that activates a blue dye when the battery comes into contact with moisture like saliva. So caregivers know medical attention could be required right away. Now, ingested batteries result in thousands of emergency hospital visits each year, and unfortunately, the consequences can be immediate and deadly. A button cell battery can burn through a child's throat in as little as 2 hours. So, Marcy, while the secure packaging and bitter coatings have been around for a while, the company says the breakthrough technology here is the color alert technology, so people can act right away if something happens.
Holy moly, 2 hours. That's sticking out for me from what you said. You can see how it would happen, though, because they just would be things you want to suck on. It looks like, a candy or a, right? Yeah. Kids put everything in their mouths. Finally, why could tourists have to pay more to visit Venice, Italy? This has been a developing story this week.
Yes, well, the city has launched the world's first tourist entrance fee. So officials say it's not really to make money, it's to try to fight the overcrowding. And that's because millions of people a year visit to see the canals, bridges, and striking architecture. So day trippers will have to pay €5 to enter the city on 29 peak days. So not all the time, but it's going to be mostly on weekends as part of a trial phase until July 14th. Now, tourists have booked at least one night in a hotel in the city will be exempt, along with residents, workers, and students. Visitors under 14 don't have to pay, but they all have to ensure they're registered online and receive their QR codes. And those without smartphones have to go to one of the city's train stations to buy tickets. There's going to be no limits on the number of people who can register, but officials really are hoping the fee will discourage visitors on the day it applies. Of course, Marcy, there's no turnstiles at the entrance points of this ancient, beautiful city to make sure people have passes, but inspectors are going to be making random checks, and they could issue fines of €50 to €300 for people who are not registered. Now, officials estimate an average of 50,000 people a day visit Venice, which is an influx that almost matches the resident population there. Now, some local advocates, though, are skeptical whether charging €5 will stop anyone. But, the city has been trying a few different things. 3 years ago, large cruise ships were banned from sailing into the Venetian Lagoon. And the city has also announced limits on the sizes of tourist groups.
What a challenge that is for that city. What's going on in the markets?
In Europe, markets are higher, regaining momentum after a dip in yesterday's session. Germany, the UK, and France are all up. In Asia, the Japanese yen slid against the US dollar after the Bank of Japan left its benchmark interest rate unchanged. Japan, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are all up. Oil is up 59 cents to $84.16 US per barrel. Gold is up $15.60 to $2,358.40 US per ounce. And the dollar is up 0.03 of a cent to 73.25 cents US.
All right, Crystal Ramakan, have an awesome weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay, thanks, Marcy. You too.
That's our business news on CBC. I'm Mercy Marcusa with Brad and Abby and Corey behind the glass. Heather Wells in our news center today. Thank you for joining us. I hope your Friday's going well. Grab a jacket, grab an umbrella. The temperature is going to drop and it's going to rain today in Winnipeg. Pretty good chance anyway. 5 to 10 millimeters is what we're expecting. It is 15 degrees right now, so it's mild when you walk out, but going to get colder. Well, still ahead in this half hour of the show, it is Game 3 tonight for the Winnipeg Jets in the playoffs. Two of the greatest Jets of all time had some advice for this year's team coming up. Ulf Nilsson and Peter Sullivan are our guests. Stay tuned. That's still ahead in this half hour. Right now, though, a bit of a delicious tune. I really love that adjective for Jay Wood's music. This one's called Sweet. It's Winnipeg's Jay Wood off his EP Grow. Tune's called Sweet. It is 11 minutes to 7 o'clock on 89.3 FM. Thanks for joining us on CBC and making us part of your memories and your morning. And speaking of tonight, different time of the day, a lot of people are going to be gathering around at 9 o'clock for Game 3. As the Winnipeg Jets get ready for a critical game against Colorado tonight, we thought we'd get some insight from some of the best players to ever play for the franchise. And Ulf Nilsson is considered to be one of the greatest of all time. He was in the group of legends who were the very first inductees into the Winnipeg Jets Hall of Fame. Nilsson played with a team in the mid-1970s. They won 2 World Hockey Association championships, or I should say he did, because there was also a third. Could this be the year that the Jets finally win again all these years later. Nilsson will be back in Winnipeg in a few weeks for a reunion of his 1975 team. I caught up with him and a teammate you're about to hear via Zoom yesterday.
Hello, hello.
What a joy to have you with us. Thank you so much for making time.
Yeah, what's the temperature like in Winnipeg now?
Warmer than you might have remembered from some of those cold 70s days. We're doing okay. It's about 22.
Oh, that's great. That's great. We have around 0 in Stockholm, so I'm very excited about coming to Winnipeg soon.
Now, also with us via Zoom, I'm just spoiled with legends this morning. A man who was known back in the day for being lightning fast. Peter Sullivan played with Ulf on the Jets in 1975. He was there for 3 Avco Cup wins, in fact, in the 70s. Last fall, he just retired from a 27-year career in scouting, evaluating players across Western Canada and into the States, spotting some of the biggest talents in the league, including Connor Bedard, who went number 1 in the draft last year. Hello, Peter.
How are you, Marcy?
I'm very well. How are you feeling about coming back to Winnipeg in a few weeks?
Well, I'm sure looking forward to it, except I heard Alfie's coming, so I'm a little upset about that.
Hey, Peter.
Did you guys keep in touch over the years?
Well, sometimes I crossed a few guys in the scouting department.
I see quite a few of the Swedish guys. I talk to Anders probably every other day, and Kent Nilsson I see every day. I can't get rid of him.
Given that both of you are part of championship teams, you know what that feels like to hoist back then the Avco Cup in your time. Can you feel, Ulf, when a team is at that point? Like, is it the momentum going into the playoffs, or does nothing really matter once you get into that playoff situation?
Well, it's hard to know, because you need to be lucky that you don't get a lot of injuries when you come to playoffs. And every winner, if it's Avco Cup or Stanley Cup or whatever, you need a good, great, and hot goaltender.
Well, we're covered there with Hellebuck for sure.
We're 7 hours ahead of you guys, so but I always look up on the computer in the morning how things went, and I follow 2 teams, the Jets and the Rangers.
Of course.
And I hope they meet in the final this year.
Oh, man, what are you going to do? Who are you going to cheer for if that happens?
Well, let the best team win.
Peter, have you been following much of what's been going on in the playoffs this year?
Very much so, yeah. Well, I think in a quick summary here, they've had a really fantastic season. They went into a little slump there for a while, but they got out of it. And, they've got a good coach there in Rick Bowness. The whole team playing well together. But I think Alfie mentioned it earlier about, come playoff time, a lot of teams think you can just turn it on or turn it off. And that's one thing I'll say about our teams in our days, that we always played at one level consistently during the regular season and the playoffs. Overall, I think the Jets have as much of a chance as anybody right now.
You played on that line, of course, Ulf, with Hedberg and Hall, and I mean the hot line. When we look today, the version today, the first line for the Jets is Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, and Gabriel Velarde. When you're playing on a line like that with 2 other players, do you know when you're just like in it and having a great night?
It's hard. Like Peter said, you can't just turn it on and off. You got to be on all the time, really. And when it comes to playoffs, there are 2 things. There's power play and penalty killing that have to be as good as the goaltending.
The Jets always still seem to be characterized as kind of an underdog team. Was it a bit like that in the 70s?
No, but I think when we had Bobby Hull on the team, I think it was a big difference. Like, he carried the league for so many years. And
just one quick story, and I think Alfie remembers this one. We were in Chicago Airport, and our old radio announcer, Friar Nicholson, met Muhammad Ali. And Muhammad Ali said, "Oh, what sports group are you with?" And he said, "Well, I'm with the Winnipeg Jets." He said, and in Russia. That just goes to show you that the reputation we had back then, and I'm sure Ali didn't know anything about the game itself, but that's the type of team we had.
He actually recognized it?
For sure.
Ulf, you were part of that, the changing of the style of the game, the first wave of Europeans to bring that flair and smooth style, replace more of that sort of brute style. What do you like about how you see the game being played today?
Well, they're much better skaters, passers, and shooters today, but I don't know if they have the same sense for the game. And today it's always up tempo. And I think sometimes you should slow it down, and no one can skate as fast as you can move the puck. And I think that's what we were good at, moving the puck really quick. But they practice it so much better than I think we did.
Peter, given that so much of your life and career, was spent picking out talent, what do you look for in a player in 2024? Like, what kind of skills can be developed? And then how do you spot talent? Because those are different things.
You're watching the players from afar, and first of all, everybody says, look at the skating. Well, to some points you do, but I always look at the hockey sense first, and then of course the ability that they have after that. But anybody that can read the plays and be a step ahead of everybody else, and that has, I think, more to do with it than the skating itself. You can find your way around the rink if you're smart enough.
So if Ulf's cheering for New York and Winnipeg, who are you cheering for, Peter?
Oh, of course I'm cheering for Winnipeg, but I remember Ulfie there. I think you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think you got knocked out by Montreal. You won the first game that season. Yeah. I've always loved going to Madison Square Garden to play. It's just the atmosphere there is just like Winnipeg. It's sensational.
It was kind of nice though. In Winnipeg, we won 2 out of my 4 years, but we lost the third year, the 7th game in Quebec, and I still remember the feeling you have after that. It's like those things sit longer with you than the successes that you had.
Isn't that interesting, hey?
Each game now is the difference. If a team loses at home, they go, they're out, like Winnipeg and Edmonton lost in OT last night. Oh, geez, here we go again. And Toronto lost. Oh, here we go again. But you know what? It's a long series, 7 games. Sometimes it feels like 10 games. And the better team will prevail.
I called in the big analyst this morning ahead of Game 3, the Jets in Colorado tonight, an important game. Ulf Nilsson, considered one of the greatest of all times to play for the Jets. Peter Sullivan, also via Zoom, both of them winning AVCO Cups with the Jets in the 70s. Nilsson was in Stockholm, Sullivan was in Regina for our conversation, and we'll actually hear more of it in the weeks ahead because they're going to be in Winnipeg for a reunion of the 1975 Jets. That's happening from May 9th to 11th. That benefits the True North Foundation, and there's all kinds of things going on and some accessibility for fans. You can find more information on Eventbrite. And as mentioned, we'll hear more in the weeks ahead on the show. Tonight, of course, puck drop is 9 o'clock for Game 3. Let's get to news headlines this morning at 3 minutes to 7 with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Air Canada is apologizing after a flight crew took the headdress of the Assembly of First Nations National Chief away from her before takeoff. Cindy Woodhouse-Nepanak, in social media posts yesterday, says airline staff forced her to hand over a case containing the sacred item as she was boarding. The National Chief says the case was put in a garbage bag to be sent away to cargo storage. We'll hear what else happened coming up. And foreign workers who want to settle in Manitoba are once again feeling uneasy. They've spoken out in recent weeks against eligibility changes made by the NDP government. They were back on the steps of the legislature yesterday protesting the latest development. We'll hear about it in our next local news at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Our temperature is going to fall to 9 today and 5 to 10 millimeters of rain expected as it continues to cloud over downtown. It's already started raining to the west. It's going to be windy too, winds south 30 to 50. Yesterday was a dust bowl, so good example of why we could use that rain here. Right now, though, it's 15. It's going to feel really mild as you walk out the door. 788-3093. Let us know what that commute is like. And remember your umbrella if you're walking, and dress properly in layers if you're riding your bike, just in case you get caught in the rain later. Coming up, illicit meat and how it could pose a threat to your health. We're going to find out more about what was uncovered in a CBC News investigation. As well, a young Muslim Winnipegger has written a letter to her mother as a poem that she will share tomorrow night at a special local event in support of the Canadian Muslim Women's Institute. So stay tuned. We're going to hear from her in the next hour. And building on the story of the airline mishandling the sacred indigenous item, we're going to hear from an elder in the next hour from our community. So stay tuned. Right now, the World Report.
Today on The Current.
Plastic pollution is expected to triple in decades.
I'm Mark Kelly. Plastic is everywhere, but international negotiations in Ottawa this week are aiming to curb plastic pollution. Some say we need to stop making the stuff. Others argue that reusing and recycling are the answer. Coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. Air Canada is apologizing to the Assembly of First Nations National Chief for removing her headdress from the cabin of a plane. Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak says she normally travels with her headdress in her lap or in an overhead bin. But on Wednesday, an Air Canada crew told her there was no room in the cabin and forced her to hand over the case. Staff put it in a plastic bag and tried to put it in the cargo hold.
This is not something you put in a checked baggage. It's that simple.
David Lametti was the federal justice minister when Canada adopted the Universal Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples in 2021. The tall headdress has 3 tiers of feathers, including eagle feathers that are positioned straight up. It was bestowed on Woodhouse-Nepenak for her work championing an historic settlement on Indigenous child welfare.
There aren't many chiefs across Canada who would have that kind of headdress. It is critically important that it be treated as a sacred object, and our national carrier should know that by now.
The pilot did bring Woodhouse-Nepenak her headdress back after she complained. Air Canada says it understands the importance of accommodating customers who are traveling with sacred cultural items and will be reviewing its policies. The Alberta government has introduced a bill that would give it more power over municipalities. If passed, the bill would give greater control to the province over how municipal elections are run, also more authority over local officials. As Julia Wong reports, critics say that's a problem.
Bill 20, entitled the Municipal Affairs Statutes Amendment Act.
Alberta Municipal Affairs Minister Rick McIver says the goal of the bill is to create more transparency and accountability in local politics. It paves the way for political parties on the municipal level, specifically Edmonton and Calgary as part of a pilot project, and would ban automated voting machines. If passed, the bill would also give cabinet powers to remove councillors in the name of public interest, but that term has not been defined.
What's in the public interest would be a case-by-case basis.
The bill could also allow Alberta's cabinet to force municipalities to repeal or amend bylaws the province doesn't like, powers that McIver hopes never have to be used.
The cabinet can't explain it in a way supported by facts why they would make such a decision, then they shouldn't make it. That's a high standard.
For Eric Adams, a law professor at the University of Alberta, the bill is worrying.
These things are not publicly debated. It means that there won't be opposition parties that are able to ask questions about why that is happening.
The new powers cabinet could have are anti-democratic, says Edmonton City Councillor Andrew Knack.
The way it's written right now sounds like it's very much about intimidation and silencing.
And Calgary Mayor Jody Gondek says there are more questions than answers with this legislation.
I think it's bordering on overreach in many cases.
If the bill is passed, the Alberta government says it will develop regulations in consultation with municipalities in the coming months. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
The federal Conservatives say the Trudeau and Ford governments can't be trusted with the new Honda deal. They say there's no guarantee the $5 billion of taxpayers' money being invested in electric vehicle plants will create good Canadian jobs. This after unions in Windsor discovered Korean workers were brought into an EV battery plant there. Janice McGregor has been taking a closer look from our parliamentary bureau. Janice, could we see the same thing happen with this Honda deal?
John, unions may not want to hear this, but here's the reality of becoming a player, bidding for direct foreign investment in a globally competitive industry. Canada's trade deal with Japan, the CPTPP, allows for certain kinds of labor mobility. Here's Immigration Minister Mark Miller yesterday.
If Honda is going to invest billions of dollars into Canada, they are in their right expected to be able to ask from Canada to honor the trade deals that we have and the contractual relationships with them.
In an interview airing this weekend on CBC Radio's The House, François-Philippe Champagne, the minister that's been the salesman-in-chief hustling for all these green technology investments, said that when they're doing these deals, the government always includes language about maximizing Canadian jobs. But Canadians also understand, Champagne said, that sometimes you do need specialized workers from abroad.
So how should we expect this to play out as Honda's shovels hit the ground in the coming months?
Well, it appears that Honda Canada has taken note of the populist backlash unfolding over the few dozen foreign workers in Windsor. Here's its CEO, Jean-Marc Leclerc, in an excerpt from an interview with him that's going to air on Rosemary Barton Live this Sunday.
Listen, our objective is to optimize Canadian jobs. And again, I don't have all the details, but for sure this is not something that we want to entertain.
Even though Honda doesn't have a union at its assembly plants, Leclerc said he's reached out to the union that sounded the alarm over foreign workers in Windsor to discuss signing a memorandum of understanding about who will do what jobs on the Honda work sites.
Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Thanks, Janice.
You're welcome.
The body that oversees the RCMP says Canada's National Police Force needs more money. Without it, the Mounties will struggle to investigate national security files and Canadian safety could be at risk. It's all outlined in a new report from the independent RCMP Management Advisory Board. Catherine Tunney has the details.
During both elections, we looked at all potential areas of concern.
That's Deputy Commissioner Mark Flynn testifying earlier this month at the Foreign Interference Inquiry. As head of federal policing for the RCMP, he oversees some of the most complex investigations in Canada, from Chinese interference to money laundering to terrorism. But a report recently obtained by CBC suggests the RCMP's ability to stay on top of those files is eroding. The RCMP's Management Advisory Board, an independent external oversight body, says federal policing is so understaffed and so underfunded, it's now at a critical stage. The report goes on to say, without major changes, public safety is at risk.
There is now a real risk of failure of the RCMP.
Christian Luprecht is a professor at the Royal Military College and Queen's University. He says more than anything else, these findings are directed at the Liberal government.
The RCMP is not able to deliver adequate and effective policing in terms of its federal mandate without serious political decisions and serious political attention and serious political direction.
Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc was not made available for an interview. In a statement, a spokesperson says the government will work with the RCMP to make sure it has enough resources. Catherine Tunney, CBC News, Ottawa.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Beijing. He's met with Chinese President Xi Jinping as well as his Chinese counterpart, Wang Yi. Blinken's hoping to work out areas of disagreement, such as Taiwan, Russia, and trade.
I look forward in these discussions to being very clear, very direct about the areas where we have differences and where the United States stands. And I have no doubt you will do the same on behalf of China. But I underscore again, it's important that we do that.
Wang Yi said that relations have been stabilizing since Chinese President Xi Jinping met with Joe Biden last November. Meanwhile, TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, says the platform is not for sale. This after the U.S. Congress passed a law to force it to sell the app or be banned in the United States. In Canada, it's prohibited on government-owned devices, but there's no word yet on whether it will be banned here. Tensions are running high at college campuses across the United States as pro-Palestinian protesters camped at schools face increased pushback from police. Some protests have turned violent, with dozens being arrested. Freelance reporter Steve Futterman has more.
On the UCLA campus, there were several brief confrontations and clashes between pro-Palestinian and pro-Israel protesters. There was pushing along with some nasty words, but not much more than that. UCLA officials for the moment appear to be willing to allow the encampment to remain in place as long as things remain peaceful. Marie Salem is one of the pro-Palestinian protesters. She says UCLA must end all economic and academic dealings with Israel.
We are really focused on our demands, and that is first divestment from corporations that are complicit with the Israeli genocide currently right now. And we really know that we can get that done, and we will not leave there until we get it done.
The mood at UCLA is much different than it was on Wednesday, around 15 kilometers away at the University of Southern California. 93 protesters were arrested.
Free Palestine!
That school is largely on a lockdown now. Its encampment has been completely removed. Only those authorized are allowed to enter the campus, and the school has also canceled next month's main graduation ceremony, saying there are safety concerns. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, for news anytime, you can go to our website, cbcnews.ca, or tune in to CBC News Network. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. Well, the rain has started in the province, not yet in downtown Winnipeg. Thanks for joining us on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the CBC Listen app. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, your morning show, and you've just heard on World Report about how a major Canadian airline mishandled a sacred indigenous item. And that, of course, has upset the Assembly of First Nations National Chief, who we'll hear from later today. This hour, though, we're going to hear from an elder more about her reaction and what went wrong. So stay tuned. That's coming up just before 8 o'clock. In addition, this hour on the program, this weekend, the Canadian Muslim Women's Institute will host an event called Embracing Our Story. We're going to hear how a young poet who is speaking there came to understand her story and her mother's sacrifice in leaving Ethiopia. But we begin with a CBC News investigation into the slaughter and sale of uninspected meat. Stay tuned. First, we go to local headlines, though, with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Winnipeg has lost out on a $1.6 billion manufacturing facility. The Japanese multinational Asahi Kasei has announced plans to build a lithium-ion separator plant in Ontario. That plant will make a component for electric vehicle batteries. Winnipeg and Manitoba were trying to lure the plant here. We'll hear more coming up. And the executive director of Lions Housing Centres is bristling at a report on its sale of Lions Place, calling it slander. That report was released this week by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives on the sale of that former 55-plus building on Portage Avenue, calling the sale elder abuse. More on that story as well as other news coming up at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into the weather forecast. Hi, Abby.
Hi, Marcy. Rain on the way. Rain on the way. That's what I'll tell you. Currently in Winnipeg, it is 14 degrees, still cloudy. Looks like a bit of mixed bag out there. Looking at the clouds getting thick as the morning progresses. Showers expected to roll in any minute now. And we're talking about a potential 5 to 10 millimeters of rain. Now, the wind will be coming in from the south and might pick up gusts along the way with that rain. Now, despite this warm conditions we are currently experiencing, the temperatures are forecasted to dip to around 9 degrees by this afternoon. And as we shift our focus to tonight, the rain won't be letting up just that easy. We're anticipating periods of rain to transition into drizzle as the night progresses. So keep an eye out for those changing winds, folks. Showers in Brandon at 10 degrees. Thompson, partly cloudy at 2 degrees. Churchill is at -4, mainly cloudy. Chance of flurries later. Dauphin is at 13, mostly cloudy. Also some showers coming in. Gimli and Steinbach, both cloudy, and we'll be getting showers, and Morris is at 12. Also some showers on the way.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
So yesterday, before we turned to the commute, Corey, it was so windy. It was like a dust bowl, so I opted not to rake.
Mm-hmm.
You raked yesterday. How did that go?
I felt foolish. It was like may as well be shoveling a lake. Like it was. Yeah, I'm sure people were driving by like, what's this guy doing? But I wanted to get it in before the rain today, so like all they can absorb all the fluff up the lawn.
So did you rake and just rush to bag up the leaves, or what?
Well, I sadly, this is also another foolish move. I raked, had a nice little pile going on there. I realized I didn't have any bags for it. So and I had to go pick up my son from daycare. So I didn't actually get around to the evening. So like all afternoon, I felt so bad because there was just these leaves like blowing onto my neighbor's lawn. And
they were probably looking out the window going, look at that guy.
That guy.
What's he doing? He might as well just put a funnel at the end of the pile.
I know. It's like, yeah, it was embarrassing. I know. I need to go send apology letters to all my neighbors now.
But you will benefit from the rain today.
Yes, exactly. I win in the long run. So
what's going on in the traffic situation this morning?
Yeah, I got a call from Water Truck Mike. He says northbound Archibald, just approaching Plingett. Plingé. I've only ever read it before. Sorry about that. There's a stalled truck blocking that northbound lane, so look out for that. And it's only one lane, like both ways, so folks are trying to get around it. That is going to cause some backups if you're heading northbound Archibald, heading towards Provencher there. So look out for that. If you see anything else going on out there, though, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. Let me know. Hopefully, maybe that truck's gone. I'd love to get an update on that as well. Give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Well, up next, a CBC News investigation into the slaughter and sale of uninspected meat is showing some troubling trends. Livestock investigators in Alberta say as the cost of meat goes up, so does the amount of it on the illicit market. And it poses threats to your health and mine. CBC reporter Terry Reith has been tracking the story, and I spoke with him about his report yesterday.
Good morning, Marcy.
So when we say, Terry, uninspected meat, what are we talking about?
Well, this is meat that is coming from abattoirs, what you and I would generally call a slaughterhouse, that are neither federally or provincially inspected. There's no oversight. They don't meet any sort of health standards, and there can be very little hygiene. So also, there's no one looking at the animals prior to slaughter to ensure they're healthy and that they're not diseased. We came across one of these slaughterhouses. It was in a residential garage in North Edmonton, a quiet residential neighborhood. Neighbor John Boss noticed trucks pulling up and unloading goats in the middle of the city and didn't know quite what to make of it.
Just the way they handled the goats to get them out of the pickup, out of the back, like they using 2x4s, prodding them along. Like I saw that's kind of weird.
But things got even stranger the next morning when he saw a bunch of goats bolt from the garage and head down the alley.
So what happened?
Well, he did what anyone else would do, I assume. He stepped outside to take a closer look, saw that the garage door next door was wide open, and then what he saw inside was something out of a horror movie. There was blood, animal parts. I know we're in the morning, so I will spare you the more graphic details, but you can kind of picture it. We've also seen a Facebook ad with the address of the garage, and it was offering the meat for sale. Fresh goats on offer. The ad also stated the meat was halal. So we called that number and spoke with a man who identified himself as Youssef. He said he never sold any of the meat, that he was butchering animals to help his community because of the high price of meat. And he believes that what he was doing was not illegal. And he went on to say that there were probably about 200 similar slaughter operations just like it in Edmonton alone. I suspect Winnipeg, no different.
What are people saying about this discovery?
Well, we have a lot of photos of that scene, and they are hard to look at. We showed a couple of them to a couple of food safety experts. One was meat microbiologist and retired University of Alberta professor Lynn McMullen, and she really didn't like what she saw.
That does not sit well with me. No. There should have been charges. That's illegal, point blank. It's illegal.
Here's why. In Canada, you can't sell meat to the public from a slaughterhouse like this one. Any meat that is sold to the public has to be inspected, and this clearly wasn't. And we should note here, the Edmonton police did investigate, but did not lay any charges in this case and would not explain why. McMullen says improperly handled meat can contain E. coli, listeria, and a bunch of other very nasty bacteria and viruses that can make us really sick.
The health risk, well, you could have animal disease in there, number one. You don't know if that animal is sick, so that meat could contain whatever that was in that animal from a disease point of view.
The Canadian Food Inspection Agency says about 4 million Canadians are sickened by bad food every year. 11,600 people are hospitalized, and on average, every year, 238 people die.
So what is law enforcement doing about this?
Well, we saw some enforcement action beginning earlier this week. 6 butchers and grocers, a caterer, and a wholesale distribution warehouse in Calgary were shut down as part of the RCMP investigation. We are told that this is big. The Alberta RCMP Livestock Unit says it involves a number of individuals, rural locations, and businesses. Also, Alberta Agriculture and Irrigation says it has ongoing investigations across the province. And frankly, the number of cases that they need to inspect is going up right along with the price of meat. Investigations becoming increasingly complex, according to Ron Wiebe. He's the head of inspections at Alberta Agriculture, and he says illicitly obtained beef, for instance, selling it half the cost of what you'd pay in a store. So think about this. If you run a commercial kitchen or a restaurant, even if you just have a family to feed, you can save a lot of money. Sylvain Charlebois, the director of the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University, says food inflation is feeding an underground market.
When food inflation becomes an issue, the black market expands. Yes, you could actually see retail shops selling illicit products, but you could also see food service establishments selling illicit products, like restaurants, for example.
It's quite a story, Terry. So how is this uninspected meat getting from these back alley slaughterhouses, so to speak, into the food supply?
Well, one way that we are well aware of is social media. If you scan Facebook Marketplace or Kijiji, for instance, you'll find lots of ads for meat on the cheap. So you have to ask yourself, where is it coming from? So we did just that. We phoned one place, asked that question directly. Where is your meat coming from? So after a lot of hemming and hawing, the man on the phone gave us the name of a legitimate, provincially inspected abattoir. So we called them up, showed them the ad, and gave them the name of the person. They said the meat in the pictures was definitely not from their place, and they had no records of ever dealing with this business or this person. A few days later, that ad disappeared. As for restaurants, storefront operations like the one ordered closed in Calgary, the RCMP, Canadian Food Inspection Agency, Alberta Agriculture, Alberta Health, a lot of agencies are looking at trying to get to the bottom of this, and so are we. We have lots of irons in the fire, so stay tuned.
All right, Terry, thank you for the report.
Thank you, Marcy.
You can read more about it online at cbcnews.ca. That's CBC reporter Terry Reith in Edmonton. It is 7:22 a.m. and sports is coming up here on the show in just a moment. Jets game 3 tonight. But first, why hasn't a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup in 31 years? CBC's Blair Sanderson hit a rink to find out.
Hello, sir.
Hello, how's it going?
Pretty well. How's the game going so far?
It's good. The ice is great. Yeah, it's pretty bad. 31 years now and counting, and I think Montreal was the last team to win, and I don't know, it's hard to fathom that they can't put a cup-winning season together for any of these Canadian teams.
Yeah, no, it's kind of perplexing. I think Canadian dollar competing maybe. Players like to have the American dollar, and contracts have to be super inflated in Canada.
The taxes and
what the players have to pay
so
more
much,
income tax?
I think they do realize they've got to pay a lot more in taxes when they come to Canada.
Hello there, sir.
Hi, bud.
How are you doing?
Very good. Yourself?
What position are you playing today?
Defense.
What about this concept that there's more scrutiny on the game in Canada? The players feel the pressure more.
Yeah, in some of our bigger markets, there is obviously definitely a lot more scrutiny than any of the, not all the U.S. markets, but a lot of them anyways.
We hear that, though, right? That the players appreciate having some degree of anonymity when they're off the ice.
Yeah, 100%. You like to go about your daily life, and you don't, in Canada, you're not getting that a lot.
And now I'm going to go onto the street and talk to people who are not in the middle of a game just to get another perspective on this whole situation with Canadian hockey. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay.
Hello.
Hi there.
You follow hockey?
I do. We always hold out hope this time of year. Try and keep positive, but also we're clenching our seats watching every game. Especially given how much hockey is kind of a pinnacle of Canadian culture. I think, the fact that we haven't actually won a playoff, I think just goes to show that maybe it's a matter of where the players are going or how we're supporting our teams here in Canada.
It's irritating. I mean, we claim it next to lacrosse as our own national sport. Like, this is supposed to be our thing, but we're not showing it, so I don't know. Don't have anything more insightful for you, but I've been suffering through it as long as I've been around.
Still watching, though.
Oh, yeah. Still watching. It's painful, though.
It's not how I view it. I look at all the teams, most, good percentage of all these teams have Canadian players on them.
But isn't that what we have to tell ourselves because we just can't win one outright, right?
It's the hardest trophy to win in sports, and with 30-some teams in the NHL, not everybody can win. There's a lot of U.S. markets that don't win either. So one of these years it'll come back north of the border, but I don't think it'll be this year either.
No?
No.
The game's become more worldwide as well. There's definitely more European players that are in the league that don't necessarily feel that the Canadian market is the number one market to play hockey in. This is for very different reasons. And yeah, so it's I think the game has changed a lot, but definitely 31 years for one of 7 teams not to have won it is definitely an anomaly for sure.
Thank you very much. Let's get back on the ice.
Thanks.
Slots player Sanderson hitting a rink to talk about the Canadian teams, the lack of a Stanley Cup in over 30 years. We'll see if the Jets can march forward tonight, Game 3, and we'll get to hockey in a moment. But first, in Morning Sports with Scott Regehr. Good morning to you.
Hey there, Marcy.
Why don't we start with what's the latest in the lead up to the Paris Olympics?
Yeah, well, questioning of World Anti-Doping Agency officials continues today in Washington, D.C., Marcy. WADA being asked why it allowed 23 Chinese swimmers to compete at the last games, even though they had tested positive for a banned substance. WADA has explained itself, saying it believes China's anti-doping agency's explanation that those swimmers were victims of contamination. The Chinese authorities say that the swimmers were staying at a hotel where months later, the banned heart medication TMZ was found to be in a kitchen, in spice racks, in sinks, etc. Critics, including an anti-doping agency head in the States, Travis Tygart, not buying this explanation, calling it a fairy tale, and asking for a full independent review of the matter. Yesterday, WADA said it would invite an independent prosecutor, Swiss lawyer Eric Cottier, to look in to what's taken place. And we'll see where this leads, Marcy. But critics have a pretty compelling case, the more details we receive on it. They wonder why WADA, for instance, never made the positive drug tests public and question whether it had anything to do with timing Beijing to host the Olympics only a few months after these results were discovered, for instance.
To a sporting controversy of a different sort, this one on the baseball diamond.
Yeah, a very wet diamond in Kansas City, as it turns out, yesterday. So wet because of the rain, Marcy. The Jays game against the Royals was ended after 5 innings. Since the Jays were behind at the time and 5 innings is enough for an official result, it counts as a Toronto loss in the standings. Here's Jays manager John Schneider.
The entire day was handled kind of poorly. What was said out there was the fact that the field was unplayable. My opinion, the field was significantly better than it was in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th inning. This was the likely outcome. Again, no one can predict the weather. I just thought it could have been handled differently. Way to lose a game.
Can you imagine if the Jays come within 1 win of the playoffs this season? That's what happened last year with Toronto eking in by 1 game over Seattle. But that's a matter for further discussion down the road. Right now, the Jays, Marcy, need to prepare for the best team in baseball and the best player the game's ever seen. Shohei Ohtani and the Dodgers are in Toronto tonight. Can you imagine the reception he's going to get from the fans when he comes up to bat? And by the way, he leads the National League in hitting. Yeah.
Finally, let's get to the hockey. Our city's on fire, vibrating, excited. I mean, windows are painted. People are wearing white. Everybody's got their Jet stuff out. We're doing interviews about how to stay up late because the game is at 9 tonight. What are you watching heading into a busy weekend for the Jets in Colorado tonight, but of course all the other games too?
Well, I want to see the Jets dictate terms. For the 2 games in Winnipeg, Colorado was at the forefront of things. And the Jets are a deeper team amongst their forwards for sure than the Avalanche are. And I want to see evidence of that. Look at the second line. They brought in Tyler Toffoli and Sean Monahan before the trade deadline for a reason. And those guys, along with Ehlers on the second line, they haven't got a point yet. So that's one place you really want to look. And of course, as ever, goaltending. Connor Hellebuck hasn't been Connor Hellebuck that we know. So that's what's going on. We've talked about it before. In Denver, at altitude, the Avalanche have been the best home team in the NHL, even if the Jets beat them twice in Denver during the regular season. So that's the setup. A 9 o'clock start time, as you mentioned, a little later than usual. But a win in Colorado is just what the Jets are looking for, to retake home ice advantage. We'll see whether they get it. But let's finish quickly, Marcy, with the very sad news surrounding a voice that attracted us to the game of hockey for a half century.
After 50 years, it's time for Canada to stand up and cheer. Stand up and cheer, everybody. The Olympic Salt Lake City men's ice hockey gold medal, Canada.
Bob Cole's call of Canada winning Olympic gold in Salt Lake City in 2002, one of countless iconic renderings Cole brought us from the ice around the world for half a century. Bob Cole passed away Wednesday at home in Newfoundland at age 90 and will be missed by all of us. Just incredible.
Thank you, Scott.
Yep.
Call to the traffic line here. It's I need to mention this here. Be called. There's a stalled van on Dunkirk in the curb lane right before the St. Vital Bridge. So this could start causing backups, if not already. You cannot turn right there. So 788-3093 with any update. And your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's 14 degrees, and that wind is now starting to ease up. Just as the forecast said, we'll see light wind by afternoon, but the temperature slides. Expect showers today, too, a high of 9. Winnipeg lost out on a $1.6 billion manufacturing facility. As CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, the lithium-ion plant is going to Ontario instead.
The Japanese multinational Asahi Kasei announced plans on Thursday to build a lithium-ion separator plant in Ontario. The plant will make a component for electric vehicle batteries. Asahi Kasei did not say precisely where in Ontario the plant will go. It will be built in a joint venture with Honda, the car company, which is building other new facilities in Canada's most populous province. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Ontario Premier Doug Ford announced $5 billion of incentives for the Honda and Asahi Kasei projects. Winnipeg and Manitoba were trying to lure the lithium-ion separator plant here. They did not disclose what, if any, incentives were on offer in this province. In statements to CBC News, they touted Manitoba advantages, such as clean energy and an abundance of critical minerals. According to sources, the plant would have been built on city-owned land near the West End Water Pollution Control Centre. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Air Canada is apologizing after staff tried to stow away the headdress of the Assembly of First Nations National Chief before a flight. Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak says staff tried to take away a case with the headdress to put it on cargo storage before departure on Wednesday. The National Chief says the case was put in a garbage bag. She says her staff was threatened by the flight crew and other passengers stood up for her. David Lametti is a former federal justice minister and a lawyer specializing in indigenous law. He says the situation is unacceptable.
There aren't many chiefs across Canada who would have that kind of headdress. I don't understand why this would have been treated with anything less than the appropriate amount of dignity that it deserves. Our national carrier should know that by now.
The airline says it is reviewing its policies, adding it's reached out to Woodhouse-Nepenak to apologize. The executive director of Lions Housing Centres is bristling at a report on its sale of Lions Place, calling it slander. That report was released this week by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives on the sale of the former 55-plus building on Portage Avenue. The report calls the sale a case of organizational elder abuse. Gilles Verrier at Lions Housing Centre says no one conducting the study ever reached out to them.
None at all. That's the sad part, is that nobody spoke to us about this. We were blindsided by this. So nobody from their organization ever contacted the board of directors and members, myself.
Verrier says in defense of the nonprofit and charity, it invested $3.6 million in repairs to the more than 30-year-old building. It also subsidized rents for 3 years. But he says with the low rents and vacant suites, Lions couldn't afford to keep that building. Foreign workers who want to settle in Manitoba are once again feeling uneasy. They have spoken out in recent weeks against eligibility changes made by the NDP government, and they were back on the steps of the legislature yesterday protesting the latest development. The province this week conducted a draw for international students graduating from post-secondary schools, but limited the draw to people with at least 4 years of work experience in the past 5 years. The province says more draws will be held in the coming weeks, exclusively for international grads with less work experience. Victims of last year's deadly bus crash near Carberry are being honoured with a monument in Dauphin. The city's mayor, David Bosiak, says the monument will be unveiled June 15th, marking the one-year anniversary of the crash. The collision happened at the intersection of Highway 5 and the Trans-Canada, leaving 17 people dead. 8 others were injured. Bosiak says a group of family members approached City Council last year hoping to establish a memorial in CN Park. Many of the victims on the bus were from the Dauphin area.
It's just that permanent reminder that, whenever people walk by or see it, that they'll recall that there was a tragedy that occurred and a lot of local people lost their lives. And I think it just shows some respect for all that was lost.
Bosiak says the family members involved in the creation of the monument have been working with a local manufacturer on the design. If you've been waiting for the name to change, you won't have to wait much longer. City Council has now approved renaming a major thoroughfare in South Winnipeg. Bishop Grandin Boulevard and Grandin Street are a step closer to being renamed to honor survivors of indigenous residential schools and the children who never made it home. Council has approved changing Bishop Grandin to Abenoji Mikana and Grandin Street to Tapwaywin Way. The name changes will be registered now with Winnipeg land titles. Then businesses and property owners who are impacted will be notified. Signs will be changed in the next few weeks. Winnipeg Transit schedule and route map will reflect the new names when it releases its summer schedule, and the city will formally mark the renaming ceremonies guided by elders in June. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, Abby, you and I are doing our best to brighten up the day. So I have to stand up to show people how.
Please do it.
If you're on YouTube, you're going to see this. So I've been trying to dress a little bit more colorful because we're always on YouTube, streaming it on television.
Yep.
And today I'm in a black shirt and you'll think, what? But it's my pants. It's my pants.
Let's see it. Let's see it. Let's see it. Oh, there we go.
I wore pink pants today because I knew it was going to be gray. And what are you holding in your hand?
It's my Crocs.
Your Crocs, they're like neon yellow, man. I like those. I like those.
Just a bit of bright. A bit of bright.
We're going to need it. Not only is it going to be cloudy and rainy today, but our temperature's going to fall, right?
That's true. We are at 14 degrees right now. It's still cloudy. It's shaping up to be a mixed bag. Oh, just putting that on back. And now as we progress into the morning, we're expecting the clouds to get thicker and thicker, and then the rain will roll in, bringing about 5 to 10 millimeters of rain. Now, despite the warmth we're feeling right now, temperatures will be dipping to around 9 degrees by the afternoon, and tonight won't really offer much relief from the rain. We're anticipating the periods of rain to transition into drizzle, so you need to watch out for that change in winds shift from the south to the north. Now, if we head to Brandon, it is 9 degrees with rain showers already. And that's the condition throughout the day. Temperatures will climb to a high of 15. Thompson is currently at 1 with a mix of sun and clouds and a chance of showers later in the day. Temperatures climbing to 10. Further north in Churchill, expects mainly cloudy conditions and a chance of flurries later, a high of +3. And down in Dauphin, we are currently at 13 degrees with showers already. They're seeing showers at that part of the province, and then clearing up later with a high of 19. In Gimli, Steinbach, and Maurice, all expecting cloudy conditions with showers and temperatures falling to 9 degrees. For Winnipeg, 14 right now. Expect clouds and showers, and the temperatures dipping to 9. Showers will be like, what's the main item agenda for today.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
They will be top of mind for sure. All right. Let's get into what's going on in the morning commute with Corey Funk.
Lots of stalls today. It's like it's January out there. Something going on. Got a call from Chris. There's actually 2 stalled cars very close to each other on northbound Archibald. Heard from Mike earlier. Northbound Archibald, just outside of Plinkett. There's a stalled truck, and it's one lane both ways, so it's causing backups there. And once you get around that truck, go a little bit further, then you see a van Then it's 2 lanes, though. It's in the middle lane, so you want to keep left as you kind of creep closer to Provencher there. So 2 stalled vehicles close together on northbound Archibald as well. Heard from, thanks for that call, Chris, for that update. As well, B called, stalled van, southbound Dunkirk, just before the St. Vital Bridge in the right lane, and there people are trying to kind of turn right off there. It's hard to because there's a stalled van right there. So look out for that. Probably because of some backups as well. So keep left if you can, heading down southbound Dunkirk towards the St. Vital Bridge. If you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. Let me know what you're seeing. 204-788-3093.
All right. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, next on the show, it's going to be a room full of people with the most incredible stories, and most of them will be women. I'm talking about an event coming up tomorrow in Winnipeg from the Canadian Muslim Women's Institute. It's their annual gala fundraiser, and the theme is Embracing Our Story. Now, my next guest is going to be one of the speakers. She's here now via Zoom to share how she came to embrace her story in Winnipeg and also her mother's journey to get here. Nawal Samir is 20 years old. She's a university student who hopes to study law, and she is a poet. In fact, she's a 2020 Poetry and Voice English Stream champion, and in the past, she's performed as an opener even for the likes of Margaret Atwood. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, Marcy.
What are you most looking forward to about being part of tomorrow night's event?
I'm just really excited to hear everybody's stories and just to be in the same room with amazing people and just to meet a lot more people that I didn't know before.
I know you're also going to be sharing some original poetry tomorrow, so we'll leave that for those of us that'll be there to be able to hear it. But can you share a bit about what you've written about?
Yeah, so when I was first asked to perform for the event, I was kind of thinking of ways that I could relate to the immigrant story, because of course I was born here, so I myself am not an immigrant. But then I was thinking, like, every single one of us has a story that relates to immigration, whether it be from our parents, from our grandparents, from the people that we gain knowledge from, everybody around us. And so I was just looking at the people in my own life and who I most relate to, and that would be my mother. And so just like thinking about how I relate to her as a woman and how I relate to her as a child, I really wanted to honor that relationship and honor the fact that I have grown to value her as more than just a mother, and to really see her for who she is. And that is a woman, that is an immigrant, that is a person that I can learn from. And that's really what I wanted to write about and mention in my poetry for tomorrow.
I can't wait to hear what you've written about your mom. You told me it's loosely sort of a letter to your mom in a way, and also built on a recent visit that you had to Ethiopia, right? That kind of also made you look at your mom in a different way.
Yeah. So I went just a few months ago, and before that I went like a year and a half ago. And when I went there, I saw everything. Like I met all my relatives. I saw everything that my mother left behind. And prior to that, I never really thought of her as anything other than my mom, as naive and cliche as that sounds. But when I met my relatives, when I saw these people, and when I saw everything that she sacrificed, it really put things into perspective, and it really made me so much more appreciative of what I have today, because I can't imagine leaving my family behind, because when my mother came here, she had nobody. And till this day, like I don't have any, like she doesn't have any of her siblings, her parents living here. We're the only family that she has. And so I was really appreciative for that sacrifice, and I really wanted to honor that.
Now, I know that you want to keep tomorrow night's poem for the event, as I've mentioned here, but you have brought something this morning that you're going to share with us of your work. So you're going to read an excerpt, I understand. What are you going to be reading from?
Oh, I'm actually going to be reading a full poem, because I found this one that I wrote in high school. It's in this anthology called Festival that was published. It's a collection of poems written by young Canadians, as it says on the cover.
Amazing.
And this is just something that I wrote when I was like in grade 11. So it's very unrefined, one of my earlier works, if you will. But yeah, it's called Graphite. And here's how it goes. Graphite, a graph at night, lead, leading into the morning light, ink, the moon sinking into the abyss its life, marker, the maker's mark, Writer, afraid to speak, fearing the words may come out bleak or stark. Graphite, graft fight, an internal struggle charted, led, leading you in on another's life. Ink, entering with no inkling of any pain or strife. Marker, with no sign, no mark showing when it'll end. Writer, the only witness to pain, misery's only friend. Graphite.
I love that you're still
it's
writing.
A little short, but yeah, that's one of my earlier. Yeah.
I love that you're still.
Sorry.
No, it's stalled there. You go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say I'm really appreciative for like events like these when I get invited to do poems, because I don't I feel like sometimes I take breaks from writing, and when I'm like asked to do poems for events, that's when I'm really forced back into writing, and it's something that makes me realize how much I love it.
You're going to continue writing, but I also mentioned you want to study law in the future, and I know you lend your voice to a lot of community-minded initiatives. Your words of poetry are part of this mural in St. Vital to highlight words of healing at one point. What motivates you to be a builder in the city, especially as a young Muslim woman?
Well, I feel like I've always been someone who hasn't been afraid to like share my story, and so I feel like the fact that I have the ability and the fact that I'd like to say I'm fearless, and the fact that I'm, again, fearless makes me, like, it pushes me to actually to do things. And when I see other people saying, oh, I wish I could be like this, I wish I could be like that, I realize I can be like that. So what's stopping me from taking that initiative, from taking that step, from participating in the thing that I otherwise wouldn't? And that's really what motivates me. And I think it's important for everybody to realize that we all have the capacity to do the things that we want to do. And there's really nothing stopping us from doing it. And again, when you look at the sacrifices made by your parents, by the people around you in order for you to get into this position, it really motivates you to strive even farther. And that's my motivation for me.
Noelle, lovely to have you on the show this morning. We will see you tomorrow night. Thank you very much. I'm grateful for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's Noelle Samir. She's a university student and poet. She is also, as mentioned, one of the people who will take to the stage tomorrow night, along with a keynote speaker, dancers, comedians. They're all going to be out to support the Canadian Muslim Women's Institute's annual fundraising gala. It is themed Embracing Our Stories, so we'll hear stories all through the evening. The nonprofit organization started in our city back in 2006. It offers all kinds of programming and supports in community. I'm emceeing tomorrow night at the Holiday Inn Polo Park. If you want more details on the event or to support initiatives through the organization, please check out cmwi.ca.
Narrative, lyric, heroic, romantic, verse, or prose. The 2024 CBC Poetry Prize is on. Send in your best unpublished poem or poetry collection. Up for grabs, cash prizes from the Canada Council for the Arts, a 2-week writing residency at the Banff Centre for Arts and Creativity, and your work published on CBC Books. Contest closes June 1st. For rules and more, go to cbcbooks.ca.
Man, to have so much poise at 20 years old, just reflecting on my last interview guest, amazing. It is 7:47 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. or on the app. It's 13 minutes to 8 o'clock on 89.3, and it's 14 degrees in the city. Now, we don't have a daytime high today. Our temperature will fall to about 9 degrees. It's cloudy right now. We are expecting 5 to 10 millimeters of rain in our forecast, so we're going to see what develops with those showers. And as we've been sharing with you, the showers are moving first into the west. In fact, it continues to rain just lightly in Brandon right now. Temperature there is still mild, though it's 10 degrees. Up in Thompson, it's partly cloudy, a different story. It's 1 degree only, and it is calm this morning. Well, coming up on the program after 8 o'clock, we've got a couple of things to look forward to. One of them is a conversation about a local shop that removes tattoos. They're expanding their services. Now they're going into prisons to help people erase a part of their past that they want to leave behind. So stay tuned. That's coming up after 8. Also, we are going to have a look and remember Heather Stephenson's career in politics. She announced yesterday that she will be stepping down after 23 years. So stay tuned. That is still ahead on Information Radio. Right now, though, let's return to what's making news both nationally and locally today. Questions are still being raised about the handling of sacred items on passenger flights. This is after Assembly of First Nations National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepanak said she was on an Air Canada flight this week. She was told her headdress was not allowed in the cabin. She posted about it on Facebook. She told CBC that staff tried to remove the headdress, headdress case, put it in the cargo storage because there was no room in the cabin. She said the situation also became tense and that her headdress was given back to her after she voiced complaints with the airline. Now, as you've been hearing in the news this morning, her Facebook post sparked a lot of backlash against the airline. Air Canada has since apologized to Chief Woodhouse-Nepanak, and we will hear from her later today. She has an interview with CBC this morning. The incident, though, has shown that the need for more education about Indigenous culture when it comes to sacred items like headdresses is absolutely a need. Barbara Nepanak is an Anishinaabe knowledge keeper and elder here in Manitoba, and she joins us now via Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning, Anine.
I understand, Barbara, you've been in contact with the National Chief about this. How is she doing?
Well, of course, she has obviously been violated. Her space has been violated, and she's been, this is not a good experience. And this is not the first time this has happened to our leadership. Even I myself have suffered, that kind of racism attitude towards me. And I was talking to another chief earlier yesterday, asking him if he had ever experienced that, and he had said many times. And it's very disheartening at this time. Here we are, 2024, and we're still. I guess we'll continue to battle with this for as long as we live.
When you say you've experienced it, and another chief shared Oyesme as well, are you talking about on airlines or traveling in other ways, or in what ways?
It was the airline security. My husband and I were going to go security, and I had, my hair was always braided, as it is for a lot of us. And they asked me to undo my braid. And I said, no, I'm not prepared to do that, not unless you're going to braid it, I said. And then he said to me, well, you have to take your braid off. And then I said, no, I'm not doing that. So in the end, so I had to raise my voice to create, some attention. In the end, what happened was, can you believe this? He took chopsticks and poked through my braid and my hair. That's what I was subjected to. And that's humiliating when you're in a public place like this and people are looking at you. And I thought, I'm not doing anything wrong. I can't help the fact that I'm this shade.
When did that happen to you?
This was probably about 6 years ago.
Wow.
And I can't remember where I was going. I was going through security anyway. Yeah. And that happened.
So that happened to you then, and obviously now 6 years later, this happens to the National Chief today. What's your sense of how we get beyond this in this country?
Well, the way I look at it is our work as Indigenous people is never going to be done as long as we have attitudes like that. I was just listening to the news earlier, and there's another incident in the educational system dealing with the same thing, with being racist. That is totally uncalled for now. I mean, here you have people in decision-making positions, and they're calling us out for whatever reason, and it's just not right. Something has to be done, not only to provide the cultural sensitivity training, but a continued ongoing forging forward to be able to address this. And it shouldn't be just us. It should be a concerted effort from all citizens to be made aware of this. I mean, once your space is violated, it's not a good feeling. There's always that mistrust.
You're referring to Paul Coffey in Western Manitoba. He's a school trustee, and his presentation. And I just want to let people know, in case people are wondering this morning why we don't have follows on the show, Paul Coffey declined our interview request. We also requested the trustees who were there, because a parent had said, why didn't anyone stop this? How did this presentation even happen there? So we have not yet heard back for anyone that is willing to talk with us here on CBC about this. I want to return to what happened to the National Chief here. What do you hope Canadians learn from this experience and the story that we're hearing this morning?
what I want to hear is and see is the respect that's garnered to us. A lot of people carry sacred items with them, and we ourselves, our family, have traveled internationally, and we have been experiencing that as well in various times. And I think our work is never going to be done as long as we have attitudes like that. And it's a situation where both ends, both sides have to come to an understanding. Either you accept who we are and what we represent and what we carry. Continued education is required. That sensitivity education is a must. I mean, you're serving the public, and everybody is very much aware of what happens in the public.
Can you share with the listeners what the headdress represents, and even when it comes to handling it, some of the spirituality around that?
Well, not everybody gets a headdress. From one thing, it's people that have achieved a level of competence and that are in a position of power. Only that person who has been given that headdress can handle that. That person, he or she, may ask for assistance when she has to put it on or carry it, and that I've seen that to happen. But no ordinary person walks around with a headdress. And when you see, like us, and people that are educated and have sensitivity towards that, and we respect our leadership for that, they carry it on their person. And I was talking to another chief yesterday, and he said, this is not the first time that has happened. It has happened to many others before. And then, like with this particular chief I'm talking about, he said, it's degrading. He said, when you're asked, when they take your headdress and they try and pry those feathers apart, using that swab, it's just, I cannot even imagine what that must feel like when you are being victimized like that.
I'm not sure if you publicly can share which chief you spoke with, Barbara, so I'll leave that to you. Are you able to tell us who you spoke with?
Definitely. We have an open relationship with our leadership. And the person I was speaking to was Chief Gord Blue Sky from Brokenhead.
Yeah,
is one of my confidants, and I have other chiefs as well that are on my side, and I had discussions with them. And then one of the common things the common thread is we have to keep moving forward, hold our head up high, because we're not doing anything wrong. We can't help who we are.
Thank you very much for being with us via Zoom this morning. Always appreciate having you with us. Thank you.
Miigwech. Have a good day.
Miigwech. That's Barbara Nipanak, Anishinaabe knowledge keeper and elder in our community. CBC reached out to Air Canada in a statement. It says, quote, we have reached out directly to National Chief Woodhouse Nipanak to better understand and apologize for her experience. And went on to say Air Canada understands the importance of accommodating customers with items and symbols of sacred cultural significance. And in the past, the chiefs have been able to travel while transporting their headdresses in the cabin. We will be reviewing our policies as a result of this regrettable incident to ensure special items such as this, whose significance we appreciate, are able to travel in the cabin with the customer consistently, end quote. CBC will speak with Chief Woodhouse Nipanak later today. We are expecting to have an interview later this morning. It is 3 minutes now to 8 o'clock. Here's Heather Wells with other updates on the news.
Winnipeg has lost out on a $1.6 billion manufacturing facility. The Japanese multinational Asahi Kasei has announced plans to build a lithium-ion separator plant in Ontario. Asahi Kasei says it's getting financial support from Ontario and Canada. Winnipeg and Manitoba were trying to lure the plant here. We'll hear more. And foreign workers who want to settle in Manitoba are once again feeling uneasy. They have spoken out in recent weeks against eligibility changes made by the NDP government, and they were back on the steps of the Manitoba legislature yesterday protesting the latest development. We'll hear about it in our next local news at 8:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
It's 14 in Winnipeg. We're going to fall to 9 today, and it's going to be windy, winds south 30 to 50. So maybe not quite as windy as yesterday with a dust bowl, but you're going to feel it. Hopefully got your umbrella and some layers out there. Call us if you have any problems. There had been some issues in St. Boniface, and so call us if there's any update on what's happening at Tlingit there. 788-3093. In the next hour of the show, coming up right after 8, The tattoo removal shop Mother Inc. is going to Manitoba prisons and jails to help formerly gang-involved people remove their tattoos. We're going to talk to the owner about the impact of that and why they felt it was important to be part of it. Also, after 23 years, Heather Stephenson is leaving politics. Chris Adams will remember her career with us. That's coming up after 8 o'clock on the show. I'm Marcy Marcusa. World Report is next. By the way, in case I didn't mention it, if you do spot anything updated in traffic or if that situation in St. Pie has changed, 788-3093.
On Cue with Tom Power.
When St. Vincent was making her latest album, she knew that she had to have total control to see her vision through. She'll tell you about producing her own record, why she wants you to figure out what the lyrics mean on your own, and the song that scares her road manager. That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Mark Kelly. Plastic is everywhere, but international negotiations in Ottawa this week are aiming to curb plastic pollution. Some say we need to stop making the stuff. Others argue that reusing and recycling are the answer. Coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. The Alberta government has introduced a bill that could give it more power over municipalities. If passed, the bill would give greater control to the province over how municipal elections are run and also more authority over local officials. As Julia Wong reports, critics say that's a problem.
Bill 20, entitled the Municipal Affairs Statutes Amendment Act.
Alberta Municipal Affairs Minister Rick McIver says the goal of the bill is to create more transparency and accountability in local politics. It paves the way for political parties on the municipal level, specifically Edmonton and Calgary as part of a pilot project, and would ban automated voting machines. If passed, the bill would also give cabinet powers to remove councillors in the name of public interest, but that term has not been defined.
What's in the public interest would be a case-by-case basis.
The bill could also allow Alberta's cabinet to force municipalities to repeal or amend bylaws the province doesn't like, powers that McIver hopes never have to be used.
The cabinet can't explain it in a way supported by facts why they would make such a decision, then they shouldn't make it. That's a high standard.
For Eric Adams, a law professor at the University of Alberta, the bill is worrying.
These things are not publicly debated. It means that there won't be opposition parties that are able to ask questions about why that is happening.
The new powers cabinet could have are anti-democratic, says Edmonton City Councillor Andrew Knack.
The way it's written right now sounds like it's very much about intimidation and silencing.
And Calgary Mayor Jody Gondek says there are more questions than answers with this legislation.
I think it's bordering on overreach in many cases.
If the bill is passed, the Alberta government says it will develop regulations in consultation with municipalities in the coming months. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
Air Canada is apologizing for an incident involving a sacred headdress belonging to Assembly of First Nations National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak. The crew actually tried to take the item away and stow it in the plane's cargo hold. Linda Ward is on the story for us. Linda, take us through what happened and where Air Canada appears to have gone wrong.
Well, John, Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak normally travels with the headdress in a case on her lap or in carry-on storage. But on a flight Wednesday, Air Canada staff took it away, put it in a plastic bag and tried to put it into cargo storage because they said there was no room in the cabin. She says the situation got tense. Words were exchanged with her staff and other passengers then intervened. She complained. The pilot came out and brought the case back. Woodhouse-Nepenak then took to social media and said in a statement, Air Canada needs a protocol for First Peoples so that we're not harassed for our sacred items. Our headdresses, she says, don't belong along in garbage bags by airlines. Now, Woodhouse-Nepenak received the headdress for her work on Indigenous child welfare. The AFN says this is one of the highest honors that you can get, and the eagle feathers are blessed to support leaders in their travels.
Yeah, and it is a remarkable looking headdress with those eagle feathers. It's quite tall. So what are you hearing in terms of reaction to this morning?
Yeah, so Air Canada quickly reacting to this, saying that they have reached out to the national chief to apologize. They've issued a statement of their own saying Air Canada understands the importance of accommodating customers with items and symbols of sacred cultural significance. They add that they are reviewing their policies. We're also hearing from David Lametti, the former federal justice minister and lawyer specializing in Indigenous law, and he says this left him stunned.
There aren't many chiefs across Canada who would have that kind of headdress. It is critically important that it be treated as a sacred object, and our national carrier should know that by now.
Federal Transport Minister Pablo Rodriguez agrees, coming out and saying this is unacceptable, saying the government expects Air Canada to treat Indigenous customers with more respect. John.
Linda Ward joining us in studio. Thanks, Linda.
You're welcome.
A First Nation in southwestern Ontario is under a state of emergency. Air quality monitors in the Aamjiwnaang have shown high levels of benzene. The First Nation says it comes from a nearby chemical plant. It's owned by multinational company Ineos. The company has announced a temporary shutdown to address what they call a mechanical issue. In Haiti, the new Transition Council is now tasked with picking a new prime minister and cabinet. Political stability remains elusive in Haiti, and gangs control large parts of the country still. But about 1,000 Kenyan troops are preparing to go in. Soldiers from Jamaica, Belize, and Bahamas will support the mission, and Canadian troops have been helping to get those forces ready to go. The CBC's Paul Hunter is there.
At a small military camp just outside the main airport in Kingston, Jamaica, rows of green army tents sit inside barbed wire fencing as a military helicopter cuts across the sky overhead. It's the late stages of a month-long training program by Canadian forces, helping troops from Jamaica, Belize, and Bahamas prepare for a deployment to Haiti. The training is to help troops from the 3 Caribbean countries act as a support team for troops from Kenya, who are expected to lead the way into Haiti, which has been spiraling ever more out of control, with well-armed paramilitary groups having effectively taken control of the capital. From Canada, the training has included first aid in a combat zone and peacekeeping. And on this, the final day of training for the roughly 300 Caribbean troops, Mission Commander Tariq Massous, deployed from Ottawa, told CBC News,
"Yes, I feel good about it. It is absolutely a tremendous commitment by Canada, and we delivered on that commitment, and I hope that we made our Canadians back home proud."
Exactly when the Kenyan troops and those now trained by Canadians will go in remains unclear, but, says Massous,
we achieved our goal.
Paul Hunter, CBC News, Kingston, Jamaica.
In the United States, scenes of confrontation and protest at Indiana University in Bloomington. At least 33 people were arrested at that protest. Scenes like this are playing out across the country. The University of Southern California has canceled main stage graduation ceremonies, the school citing safety concerns for the cancellation. Hundreds have been arrested from on-campus pro-Palestinian protest camps in the last week. TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, says the platform is not for sale. This after the U.S. Congress passed a law to force it to sell the app or be banned in the United States. In Canada, it's prohibited on government-owned devices, but there's no word yet whether it will be banned here. The second phase of voting is underway in India. About 160 million people are expected to cast their ballots as the world's biggest election rolls on. Priyata Brajabasi has more from New Delhi.
Nearly every day this week, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has made the same claim in his election speeches, accusing his rivals of wanting to prioritize the welfare of Muslims over that of Hindu citizens.
My rivals will collect all your wealth and distribute it amongst those who have more children.
they will distribute it amongst the infiltrators. Should your hard-earned money be given to the infiltrators?
This was a reference to India's 200 million Muslim community. And critics say Modi is peddling anti-Muslim rhetoric to bolster his position with the country's majority Hindu voters. Modi has defended himself by saying he's simply speaking the truth. India's main opposition party, the Indian National Congress, has denied they have any such plans of redistributing the wealth of the nation. The party's de facto leader, Rahul Gandhi, said this in response.
For the first time in the history of India, a political party has attacked India's constitution with an aim to destroy it.
5 days after Modi made the comments, the Election Commission of India finally wrote to Mr. Modi's party asking for an explanation on Thursday. But the opposition has accused the body tasked with holding free and fair polls in the country of leniency, furthering allegations of the government misusing federal agencies. Political experts say polarizing voters ahead of elections is a familiar tactic of Modi's ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, one that works in their favor by consolidating the majority Hindu votes. Priyata Brajbasi for CBC News, New Delhi.
And finally, Burkina Faso has suspended BBC and Voice of America radio stations for their coverage of a report by Human Rights Watch. The report accuses the military of killing more than 200 civilians, including 56 children, in villages suspected of cooperating with militants. Burkina Faso's communication spokesperson says both radio stations have been suspended for 2 weeks. The country is warning other media networks not to report on the story. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, for news anytime, go to our website, cbcnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Well, good morning, Manitoba. After yesterday's windy dust bowl today, we've got some sunshine downtown, but the clouds are going to take over, the temperature's going to fall, and we're expecting rain. That's what Friday's looking like. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Well, this half hour on the show, a local shop that does tattoo removal is expanding their services. They're going into prisons and jails. They're helping people erase a part of their past that they might want to leave behind. We're going to talk more about that story coming up in studio with a live interview. Also this half hour on the program, remembering 23 years of political life. Heather Stephenson yesterday announced that May 6th, her last day, she will be leaving as MLA of Tuxedo over many years. We'll get some analysis of her time in office, and of course she was the first woman to become premier of the province. So stay tuned, that's all still ahead. First though, let's go to Heather Wells with our news.
Air Canada is apologizing after a flight crew took the headdress of the Assembly of First Nations National Chief away from her before takeoff. Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak, in social media posts yesterday, says airline staff forced her to hand over a case containing the sacred item as she was boarding. The National Chief says the case was put in a garbage bag to be sent away to cargo storage. Woodhouse-Nepenak says it was handed back by the pilot after she complained. We'll hear more. And victims of last year's deadly bus crash near Carberry are being honored with a monument in Dauphin. It will be unveiled on June 15th, marking the one-year anniversary of that crash that claimed the lives of 17 people. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby.
It looks sunny outside, I know.
Yeah, what is going on now?
No, if you look farther west, you'd find out that thick clouds are actually gathering together.
Still there.
So it's going to happen. The rain is on its way. Don't think the sun is shining for now. Currently, we are at 14 degrees, still stuck there. The clouds, they're getting thick and showers are on the way. We're expecting 5 to 10 millimeters of rain this morning and some winds from the south. Now, temperatures not the high for today. It's going to be dipping to 9 degrees later. In Brandon, it's 11. Some rain already you've seen, and that's going to be the situation all day. Showers all day with highs coming to 15. Thompson is at 4 degrees, partly cloudy, getting to a high of 10. Further north in Churchill, it is -3 and partly cloudy. Chances of flurries and high of +3. Dauphin is at 13. Gimli, Steinbach, Morris, all seeing showers later today, and temperatures are going to be deep into 8s and 9s this afternoon. But for Winnipeg, the rains are coming.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
What's happening in traffic, Corey?
Pretty stally out there this morning. Got a call from B on northbound Dunkirk just before the St. Vital Bridge. I said southbound earlier, so apologies for that. It is northbound Dunkirk. Just before the St. Vital Bridge, there's a stalled van in the right-hand lane that could be causing some backups for folks, especially folks who are trying to turn right. You kind of got to go around before you can. So look out for that as well. Northbound Archibald, weirdly enough, 2 stalls very close together. Northbound Archibald, when it's just one lane both ways, just before Plinkett, or there's a stalled truck. And then as you go further up north, in the middle lane, there is a stalled van. So we got to keep left to get around that as you kind of get closer to Provencher. So look out for that. Could be causing some backups for folks. Thanks, Mike and Chris, for those calls. If you see anything else going on out there, though, give me a call, especially if those are cleared up. Would love to let folks know about that. Let me know. 204-788-3093.
Well, up first this half hour, tattoos have a lot of significance for people. It might commemorate a lost loved one, a friend, something you want to remember. But for some people, tattoos might be a reminder of a past that you want to move on from. Mother Inc., as I mentioned, is a local tattoo removal shop. They help former gang members, people who worked in the sex trade, people coming out of custody, all kinds of different people who might want to remove their tattoos. And they're now taking their initiative a step further. They're going into jails to help people before they're released. Mother Inc. just started the initiative a couple weeks ago at Headingley Correctional Center. Della Stanky is owner and in studio with us. Good morning.
Good morning.
I can't imagine how powerful that would be, sitting with someone before they're released and physically removing something that they want to be removed.
Absolutely. Some of them even get very emotional. I mean, they're supposed to have this tough image and everything else, but just seeing that tattoo little by little come out, they're actually very emotional about starting their life over.
Yeah. Why did you want to get into doing this in this way?
Well, basically about 8 or 9 years ago, I was working in a federal halfway house, and I noticed, I was already doing tattoo removal. I'd already been trained only months before. But then I had I had several guys come in, actually, who didn't even want to leave the yard. They actually were scared to leave the yard because it was a safety thing more for them. They were scared about getting jumped either back into their old gang or into a new gang. And so, it was something that I just thought, well, maybe I could help them. And I asked some of the bosses, and I just said, after hours, can I take them? I won't charge them anything or anything like that. And they said, yeah, that would be great. And then parole and probation would be in our house all the time. And they would come and talk to me and say, well, you did this for one. Can you do this for? And yeah, absolutely. And then I sort of thought that this was going to be my future because I could see it getting so busy so fast and just sort of taking off from there. I continued to work at the halfway house, but funded this program through my wages and everything, and did it for nothing for probably between 300 and 400 ex-gang members within 8 years.
Wow. So some of that we were talking about the personal sort of how you identify as yourself and seeing a piece of your past, literally being removed off your body. But some of it is also then safety if you're back out there and being identified in that way physically, that you still would be part of whatever gang it is.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
800, you said 600 or 800 removals?
Well, I've done, at that point in time, I was between 300 and 400.
3 and 4, sorry.
Now I would easily say probably around 600.
Yeah. So now, what does it feel like to have this evolve, and now you're able to go into jails to do this?
It's amazing. For 8 years, like I said, I was trying and trying because I knew every single one of them that would come out would say, I just wish this would go faster. I need to get a house. I need to get a job. And people look at my face or my neck or anything. They recognize gang signs and they turn me down for jobs and everything. It's very easy for them to fall back into their past when they're being turned down. They're trying to change. They're doing everything in the right way to change, except people aren't giving them a chance because of the way they look. And, just seeing all those tattoos on their face, a lot of people still don't understand that, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're all gang members or anything else. Some of us just really like tattoos. But that's why I don't only help, ex-gang members. I mean, probably 95% of the people I help are ex-gang members, but there are a lot who it's just something that they did when they were 16 years old.
You have that too.
Yeah, you have that bad tattoo on your face and you can't get a job.
What was the process for you like to get into the jails to do this?
It was a long process. I first started out about 8 years ago being in touch with Stony Mountain, and they're still trying. They're still trying to get me in there. I have had meetings in there and everything. We think we're getting closer.
Because you've been in Headingley.
I've been in Headingley, yeah. But Stony Mountain really wants me in there as well.
Are they helping with paying for this, like with Headingley and the ones you've done now? Because you said at first this is all pretty much out of your pocket.
Yeah, Headingley, I don't charge them at all. I actually am funded through the province and through the city, so I do make an hourly wage. So other than that, I don't charge any extra to go into the prisons and everything else. I also go in there to mentor the guys and girls as well, because I am in the female prison as well. Not doing tattoo removal in there for a few more weeks, but I do go and have meetings in there and mentor the girls, and especially right before they get out, I try to help them with housing and a lot of different services they need.
You also are looking to expand these services. You've talked to some chiefs on reserves in Manitoba who's actually expressed a desire to have you expand the services, I should say, to communities. So tell me a little bit about that initiative.
Actually, I thought about, I always want this project to move forward. I mean, it's been going so great and it's so busy and everything else, but I always know that there's more that can be done. So probably about a year ago, I contacted different automotive dealerships here in Winnipeg, and Dillon Automotive actually very graciously had me come down there, and they are actually willing to donate me a vehicle if I can come up with just some of the costs. Not only are they going to donate the vehicle, but they're actually going to help me get it renovated so I can live in that vehicle. Like it's going to be like a van. And then I'm going to be here 20 days out of the month doing the prisons and my clients that I do in shop, and going on the road 10 days out of the month and trying to get to all the reserves that I can possibly get to 10 days a month. So
it's really important, the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Tell me just last, when you're finished the process and somebody is finished it, you talked about that moment, but do you ever stay in touch with people? Do they ever say to you,
Hundreds of them.
Yeah.
I get invited to weddings, baby showers, gender reveals. They call me when they got their first house, their first job, anything. Like, it's just like my kids all complain because they say she used to have 3 kids and now she has a few hundred. And that's exactly the way it is. And
you change their lives, though.
That's right. And even if they do end up falling back into the life, they still keep in touch with me. I have calls daily from all the prisons, including even New Brunswick and Edmonton, where some of my guys have ended up, and they say they want to change again. I have phone calls all day long, right until midnight.
Good luck with your initiatives moving forward. Thank you so much for being in this morning and chatting with us about this, and appreciate the work you're doing.
Thank you for having me.
That's Adela Stanky. She's the owner of Mother Inc. It is right now 8:21 a.m.
I'm Janet Stewart. The U.S. government is so worried about the Chinese government getting personal information about TikTok users, it's forcing the Chinese company that owns the social media app to sell it or have it banned in the United States. Canada is watching. Let us know, would you like it if TikTok was banned here? Join us Friday for Radio Noon, or call now and leave a message, 204-788-3797.
8:22 a.m. is the time right now, and in Winnipeg it's 14 degrees. Well, next on the show, former Manitoba Premier Heather Stephenson is resigning as MLA for Tuxedo. Yesterday was her last day addressing the chamber for the final time before she resigns. It takes effect May 6th. Here's a moment in 2021 when she was on CBC. This was right after she became the first woman premier.
You know, it's really exciting. I think it's not just about me, but it's for Manitoba. This is a huge milestone. It's historic and really exciting, I think, for women.
And here is Heather Stephenson speaking yesterday.
For 23 years, serving as MLA, minister, and the first woman premier has been the honor of a lifetime. These roles allowed me to serve Manitobans and help pave the way for future generations of women in public service. Thank you, Manitoba, for the opportunity, the responsibility, and the honor.
Chris Adams is with us this morning, adjunct professor of political studies at the University of Manitoba, to talk about Heather Stephenson's long career in this province in public service. Good morning.
Hi, Marcy. Nice to be with you again.
I should also mention we did request an interview with Heather Stephenson. She was very polite, and she very politely declined, and she passed along that she enjoyed our monthly discussions here. So I just wanted to pass that along. But we didn't want this morning to go away without thinking about what she did with her leadership role. So what would you say, does she have a legacy that you can pinpoint?
Well, I think she does, Marcy. And by the way, I enjoyed seeing the photo that you posted on your Facebook of you and Heather Stephenson. It was a nice photo. But I would say her legacy, there are a few things to mention. One, of course, as you mentioned just now, that she was the first woman premier of Manitoba, and that's no small thing. I think, she had a tough road to hoe. She had taken over from Premier Pallister. Brian Pallister was sort of at the depth of his popularity. That is, he was a highly unpopular premier when he had left, and it was in the midst of the COVID lockdown, and there were a lot of relationships to mend upon becoming the new premier. That includes the relationship with the federal government, relationship with the Mayor Brian Bowman at the time. So she came into power as the first woman premier, but someone who was willing to be conciliatory. I would say that part of the style that she had was very different than Brian Pallister. She was much more of a team player. She was not when she was in the room, she wasn't the only one in the room, put it that way. So I think it was her style as well as her approach to politics. I would say that she had many problems. Firstly, she was elected as premier not by the voters, but she was elected by the members of her party. So right off the bat, there was a problem in terms of how the voters saw her. Also, that she had been elected by the narrowest of margins against Shelley Glover, and immediately there was a court case where Glover was challenging her election. So she started off like sort of a bit off balance, and she had a number of gaffes with the media and in the legislature. But I would say that as she moved further into her premiership, her style became a little bit more confident, and by the time it got to the election, she was doing a better job with the media. So there are a number of things regarding the 2 years as premier that one can speak about.
Yeah. Now, you saw the picture I posted, so I'm going to actually go to some of the comments. I posted thanking her for joining us on CBC Manitoba and for 23 years of public service. But, I mean, the comments range from best wishes to good riddance. And somebody did bring up how they will remember her, which is for the campaign. A campaign that she apologized for afterwards, and yet she led through that campaign, so she's responsible for that. This is the ads that the Tories ran that were denounced by several high-ranking members, touting the government's opposition to the landfill search at the time.
Yeah. Well, I would say that
one can't separate her from that, can they?
Well, I would say, Marcy, that when you look at a leader's strengths, there are also the leader's weaknesses. And Pallister's strengths were that he could be single-minded, he could go straight for what he wants and damn the torpedoes. Whereas Stephenson's strengths were working with a team, listening to advice, working collaboratively. And that was a strength, but I think it was the weakness, too, is that she deferred too much to her campaign director and others who were moving her towards a style of campaign that really wasn't Heather Stephenson's character. So I would say that really that showed that the weakness of her, but it also sort of reflected her strengths in other areas for campaigning. And I would say that, I'm not partisan, but I would say that, when a leader leaves, it's time to show a little bit of graciousness. And also, over time, people will think of her differently than they might right now. And just thinking about Brian Mulroney, he left, and the polls were terrible for him. His party, shortly after he left, was decimated in the 1993 federal election, and people look at Brian Mulroney now in a different light. So could be the same with Heather Stephenson.
Bartley Kivas, who covered Stephenson's career over 23 years, wrote an interesting article that I think stands out for me this morning upon news of her resignation now from politics, leaving politics. It said, "Will the real Heather Stephenson please stand up?" That was the title. And it was referring to how she behaved on, what she brought forward on election night after the loss, graciousness. That letter people will remember she wrote to Wab Kinew as he took over as premier. He was referring to that yesterday. And then that not matching up with some of the things and some of the decisions that had happened. Looking at this as an example moving forward for all parties in Manitoba, how do we make sure that it does match up? That politicians, I'm being gracious here, but that will feel that they can stand up? Or has the political world moved so much to ugliness and winning campaigns that we're not going to return to that?
Yes, well, I there are a number of things in what you're saying there, Marcy. I would say, firstly, the legislature is in many ways political theater, and we have to hope that politicians will act in a sort of a proper manner in the assembly. And we saw a very fractious assembly over the past couple of years. And Myrna Dreger, the past Speaker of the Assembly, many times had to ask members to behave more politely to each other. And then we talk about campaigns. Many campaigns are in the hands of the professional directors and the handlers and the advertisers. And so, and that's always been a problem. And so it might become more and more as we see campaigns becoming more professionalized, if I could say that, in Manitoba compared to 30 or 40 years ago. But that being said, I think each leader has a style in handling their campaign team and setting the tone. And I think that's where Kivas is really criticizing the outgoing leader is that maybe as leader she should have been the real person to control her team a little bit better.
Thank you for remembering her service this morning with us, Chris. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Marcy. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, you as well. That's Chris Adams, Adjunct Professor of Political Studies over at the University of Manitoba. If you want to weigh in or read more about Heather Stephenson, we have an article at cbc.ca/Manitoba this morning. Yesterday, she announced she is leaving politics. It is coming up now to news time, 788-3093 if you need us on the drive, if anything's developing with the things Corey's been mentioning out there. But right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is 14 degrees. That wind still strong, but it will ease up this afternoon, becoming cloudy with showers today, and our temperature is going to slide to 9. Air Canada is apologizing after staff tried to stow away the headdress of the Assembly of First Nations National Chief before a flight. Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak says staff tried to take away a case with the headdress to put it on cargo storage before departure on Wednesday. The National Chief says the case was put in a garbage bag. She says her staff was threatened by the flight crew and other passengers stood up for her. David Lametti is a former federal justice minister and a lawyer specializing in indigenous law. He says the situation is unacceptable.
There aren't many chiefs across Canada who would have that kind of headdress. I don't understand why this would have been treated with anything less than the appropriate amount of dignity that it deserves. Our national carrier should know that by now.
The airline says it is reviewing its policies, adding it's reached out to Woodhouse-Nepenak to apologize. Winnipeg has lost out on a $1.6 billion manufacturing facility. The Japanese multinational Asahi Kasei has announced plans to build a lithium-ion separator plant in Ontario. It will make a component for electric vehicle batteries. Asahi Kasei says it's getting financial support from Ontario and Canada. Winnipeg and Manitoba were trying to lure the plant here. They did not disclose what, if any, incentives were on offer in this province. According to sources, the plant would have been built on city-owned land near the West End Water Pollution Control Centre. The head of Lions Housing Centre says no one who wrote a scathing report into the sale of its former seniors building on Portage Avenue ever reached out to him for the Lions side of that sale. The Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives released a report this week on the sale of Lions Place to a private company. It called it organizational elder abuse. It also called for an inquiry and audit on the sale of that Portage Avenue building. Gilles Verrier with Lions Housing says he was blindsided by the report and welcomes an independent investigation.
They can do all the audits they want. I'd love them to look at it because guess what? Bring it on, because they'll see what we do for our residents. And we go above and beyond, and that's not an exaggeration.
Verrier calls the report slander. He says the Lions not only put millions into the building, but also subsidized rents for 3 years. But he says the nonprofit could no longer afford to keep the building. Manitoba's government is taking more heat for its criteria for allowing foreign workers into the province. This week, the province conducted a draw for international students graduating from post-secondary schools, but it limited that draw to people with at least 4 years of work experience in the past 5 years. Sarah Sun is a recent grad from China who joined a protest on the steps of the legislature yesterday. She worries her family will have to leave the country if they don't obtain permanent residency.
Upset. I feel very upset, and I think even though I got my English score and I found a job, it means nothing. Yeah, I feel very stressful because I have a son. He is 10 years old.
The province says more draws will be held in coming weeks. Victims of last year's deadly bus crash near Carberry are being honoured with a monument in Dauphin. The city's mayor, David Boziak, says the monument will be unveiled on June 15th, the one-year anniversary of the crash. The collision happened at Highway 5 in the Trans-Canada, claiming the lives of 17 people. Boziak says a group of family members approached City Council last year hoping to establish a memorial in CN Park. Many of the victims on the bus were from the Dauphin area.
It's just that permanent reminder that whenever people walk by or see it, that they'll recall that there was a tragedy that occurred and a lot of local people lost their lives. And I think it just shows some respect for all that was lost.
Boziak says family members involved in the creation of the monument have been working with a local manufacturer on the design. CBC is hearing from Burton Cummings for the first time about a dispute over who can play songs written and performed by the Guess Who. That storied Winnipeg band is responsible for countless hits. But this month, Burton Cummings ended the performance rights agreement for the songs he wrote while he was with the band. At issue is a band touring under the name Guess Who and playing those songs. Since Cummings pulled the rights to his songs, the other band has canceled shows. Cummings quotes a friend who posted about the dispute online.
They're like a band of bank robbers who are upset that the bank they have been robbing for years have decided to improve their security to prevent any future robberies. It's as simple, the bank, let's put it this way, the bank is now closed.
Cummings says he is still happy to grant access to his songs to those who ask, except for the cover band. And he doesn't rule out a return to Winnipeg where he will play those songs himself. That is the CBC News from Winnipeg. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Heather Wells, Megan Ketchison, Aaron Broman as well in unit. Corey Funk, Abby Adiemi, Chloe Friesen, Issa Kixon, Kalkadan Mulugeta, Sierra Sanders, Chidi Akuma, Jim Agapito, Dylan Longhurst, Colton McKillop, Daniel Friesen, Bruce Layden, and Brad Lillies, Shannalee Vidal, Natalie Kidwai, Faith Wendell, Janet Stewart, Wendy Parker, as well as Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson. That is our team that works on all of the shows. Thank you, everybody. Corey, you have a super cute thing to share about the Jets game tonight.
My wife dropped off my 1.5-year-old kiddo at daycare today with a Jets jersey on, and all the preschool kids, as he walked in, just hooped, hollered. He was like the most popular kid in daycare. It was amazing.
They went crazy!
Yeah. Woo!
Oh, poor preschoolers. They won't be up for puck drop at 9.
Yeah, no way.
Quick traffic here?
Yeah, look out for stalled cars northbound Archibald approaching Provenche. Might catch you off guard a little bit there.
Abby, quick weather?
A mix of sun and cloud in the north, and it's going to be showers in the south.
All right, everybody, enjoy the weekend. We're back again Monday on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and The Current is next.